Championship Wrestling, bringing you great wrestling action, sanctioned by the NWA, National Wrestling Alliance.
What can you do? Let's talk about this show.
Starting with the June 6th, 1987 edition of World Championship Wrestling. It opened with clips of the Rock and Roll Express wrestling Manny Fernandez. That was really hard for me to say for some reason. And they never showed in this clip who Manny's partner was. So I couldn't wait to see what clever editing trick they did. Turns out it wasn't that clever.
It was still kind of clever.
It was clever-ish, but it wasn't like the... Anyway. So they go to the announcers, and David Crockett can't wait.
Oh yeah, he's out of his mind.
Guess what? He says. He announces the Rock and Rolls have defeated Manny Fernandez and Rick Rude for the World Tag Team titles. Their fourth championship reign.
I love David Crockett, but he was so excited to basically tell us that Rick Rude went to WWF.
Essentially.
It's like, dude, you lost a great guy. You're all excited because the Rock and Rolls are champions again. But that's his job, so I won't hold it against him.
We had the New Breed versus Alan Martin and Mike Force. The New Breed are still technically heels. They still wrestle like heels. But the crowd absolutely loves them. Beat him up, Sean.
Why wouldn't they?
Beat him up, Chris.
Because Champion would fit right in here in 2017. It really is a time traveler gimmick.
Pretty much. They won with a missile dropkick suplex combo. So we got the full footage of the Rock and Rolls winning the tag titles. And I figured what they would do. First, I figured they'd cut in clips of like Manny wrestling, like Ivan Koloff on the apron or something. But no, Rick Rude's still there. So I said, okay. So clearly this is like a non-title match or something taped months ago. And they'll edit in a different finish. But they do the match, and Ricky pins Fernandez with a sunset flip.
Yep.
So who the hell knows when this actually happened?
Yeah, this was clips from some random match. Mm-hmm. It could have been a non-title match.
It's possible, actually. The belts are never even shown.
Yeah, they never showed. Once they won, they never announced them as champions. They never handed them belts. It's very possible that, like, the Midnight Express were the champions.
Yes.
And this was a random match between Raging Bull, Rick Rude, and the Rock and Rolls. And they filmed it, and they used it and claimed it was the match in Spokane.
Yes.
Which never happened.
Right.
Where they allegedly lost the title. So the only thing I could think watching this was, I wonder what all those fans think, that they paid their money, they bought their tickets, and then months later they saw the show that they were at, and this company claiming that that was a tag team title change. Their minds must have been blown.
That's a fine question. They'd probably remember?
I'm sure they'd remember.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure it was in whatever building they were in. They watched the match.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm positive they'd remember.
So Jim Crockett Jr. met with Tony Schiavone to plug the upcoming Great American Bash Tour, and then history. As he announced on July 4th, in Atlanta, Georgia, they were going to host The Match Beyond.
Yes.
What is The Match Beyond, you ask? Tune in next week.
That's right.
He just said it. That's what it is.
Yeah, the original name of War Games was The Match Beyond.
Yes.
Like, later they called it War Games The Match Beyond, but here all they promised was The Match Beyond.
Yes. No indication of who would be in it or what was at stake or
what it is. No one knows.
You had to wait a week and tune in to next week's episode to find out. Rock and Roll Express versus Randy Barber and Cougar J. Now, it's not like the fans had ever fallen out of love with the Rock and Roll Express or never stopped liking. There was no backlash or anything like that. But, boy, they came out with these World Tag Team titles, and these fans fell in love all over again. That's passionate support. And the Rock and Rolls wrestled for a while and had the double dropkick for the win. Cut a promo after the break about how great it was to be champions for the fourth time, and no time to rest in this business. When you are a new champion, you don't get to celebrate. It's time to go on the defenses. And so they plugged a title match against Ric Flair and Lex Luger. Jimmy Garvin beat Terry Jones in a minute with a brainbuster.
Where the fuck did they find this Terry Jones? He looked like either a fat mulkey or a very sickly Buddy Landell. And Precious goes over there and she sprays stuff on him, and I thought, probably needs it. It was hideous. Got brainbustered and pinned. Every show, there's just a new absolute geek.
So the Horsemen have a new gimmick, which is that when they came out for a promo, the whole screen is taken up with a Four Horsemen logo. Then it shrinks down to the corner, and it fades away.
It's atrocious.
it gets even better next week.
It does get better, but like, who designed this logo? Like, God bless you, whoever you are. But this is like the cheapest, lamest logo you've ever seen in your life. Like, every Bullet Club shirt that's ever been created is better than this one. Even the worst one.
The knockoffs.
I don't think there's one, maybe like one of the random Young Bucks shirts that just says Super Kick a million times, but I don't think there's one shirt on Pro Wrestling Tees with any semblance of a design that is worse than this Four Horsemen logo.
It's 4 horse heads.
Yeah, not even good ones. Yellow.
They were yellow.
I guess gold.
So this promo was JJ, Tully, and Dark Journey. First, they talk about how great their logo is. Said the $100,000 TV title match with Dusty Rhodes was here. And as they're ranting about how great they are, how they're going to beat Dusty, they cut to some... Every time, like, Lex Luger or Stan Lane comes out, or Flair for that matter, they cut to women in the crowd trying to get them drooling over the wrestlers. Most of the time, it just doesn't work. When they had Dark Journey out there, they found some fans who were entranced.
Oh, yeah.
These men...
They sure were.
Predators. That's the only way I can describe their gaze. Their lurid gaze. They wanted to do things to this woman. So Blanchard's so happy about how great he is, how great all the horsemen are. Says Dusty's not there. He must be in seclusion somewhere. But I'm here. My biorhythms are up. Biorhythms.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I guess.
He promised Dusty would go down 1, 2, 3, and as TV champion, he would still have all the prestige and all the notoriety. This was great. Little did I know.
This was nothing compared to what was to come.
Yes. Midnight Express versus Trent Knight and Larry Stevens.
2 more geeks. Where did they get these 2 geeks? They absolutely sucked.
They did.
Just 2 wet noodles, wet noodling around the ring. Just hideous.
I like when one of them hit a sunset flip for a 2 count, and Cornette said, "Hey, these guys are trying to win the match. That ain't fair."
The temerity of these jobbers for trying to win against the Midnight Express.
So the Midnights won with a double flapjack.
Yeah, after Bobby just does a random bombs away knee drop and just tags his partner.
There's a lot of stuff like that. The new beat of the...
Do you realize that move ended the reign of Bruno Sammartino?
Yes.
And Bob Eaton
the knee drop, not the
threw
flapjack.
it against a jobber and then tagged in his buddy.
Yeah. The New Breed are really bad at doing a cool move and then ending with a finish that's not nearly as cool. Although they did not do that this week.
Yeah, that's 2017. From the future.
I suppose it is. So, Cornette and the Express ran down the Rock and Rolls, challenged them to a title match. Time for the weekly Ric Flair video.
At least, maybe I just never noticed it before, but I've seen this video, it's seemingly like 1,000 times. Mm-hmm. Maybe I just zone out as soon as I see it, but at the end, I think they've added, coming to an arena in your area.
Yes.
So now it's kind of like, okay, I get it. Like, they showed this video, and then he's coming to your town.
Hopefully.
That's better than before, where it was just, I see this video every single week.
Yes. An amazing Barry Windham interview.
Oh, my God.
Barry Windham had 2 jobs.
You know what's funny about this?
A lot.
So, like, is the Western States Heritage title all that prestigious?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. But Barry Windham's out there, and he cannot remember the name of this belt.
No.
And as soon as he spits out the Western title, like, my brain said, is he talking about the Western States Heritage title? Mm-hmm. How my brain came up with that, I have no idea. But that's the belt that he was talking about. He couldn't remember the name of the belt he was fighting for.
He tried like 3 times to plug this championship tournament. He got Western, then I think he said Western States, then went back to Western. Never got Heritage in there. That was never part of his promo.
Never, not once.
So that was job 1, plug the Western States Heritage Championship tournament. Failed. Job 2, plug matches against Big Bubba for the UWF Championship. Failed. Now, perhaps in his defense, maybe they didn't want to promote the Ultimate Wrestling Federation or the Universal Wrestling Federation. But he came out and said, I'm also challenging Big Bubba for his championship. That's what he called it.
Yeah.
Like Bubba had invented a belt like Larry Sweeney.
How dare you?
It was a very bad promo by Barry Windham.
Thankfully, Tony then explained it was the Western States Heritage title.
Yes.
Vinny, every title was just created by somebody. It's what you make of the title.
Yeah, but usually
This is a very prestigious title that's sitting here in this glass case right here.
most of them are created by a promotion and then awarded to
He
somebody
was
else.
a one-man promotion, this Larry Sweeney.
That's actually factually true.
Thank you.
Larry Sweeney was. Bubba was not.
No, he really wasn't.
No. Arn Anderson versus Chance McQuaid. It showed Baseball Hall of Famer Lou Brock watching from the stands, among the dozens of people in attendance. So Arn squashes poor Chance. He goes for the gourd buster, and Chance totally fucks it up. And Arn goes to lift him, and Chance just goes straight down. So Arn looks at him, picks him up, hits it again. He gets the pin with his hand all over Chance's nose and mouth, and then just stomps him 2 or 3 times for good measure.
A very disappointed stomp there, too.
Do not fuck up Arn's finish.
Chance McQuaid.
You'll
I
get
read
upset.
these jobbers' names, and it's like, haven't they wrestled 3 times on this show already? It's amazing. They're such interchangeable geeks.
Dusty Rhodes cut a promo from some other show.
Okay, so I figured it out.
Good.
So he's ranting and raving, and all of a sudden, he spouts out some line, and I'm pretty sure that he said that he got whiskey bent and glory bound.
I got Whiskey Bit and Glory Bound.
There's a Hank Williams Jr. song, Whiskey Bent and Hellbound.
I see.
He changed it to Whiskey Bent and Glory Bound.
Aha.
He did a very bad job of this.
He congratulated the Rock and Rolls on the title win, said he was so excited he was going to do a double backflip. Dusty would also fit in 2017. Talked about Dark Journey, said the last time Tully Blanchard had a good-looking woman, Dusty had taken her and made a lady out of her. And he threatened to do the same to Dark Journey. Jimmy Garvin was there to cut a promo, or he was there where they cut promos, but he did not come out to cut a promo. Jimmy Garvin came out to make out with his wife.
Basically, yeah.
And then once he was done, he thought, well, I'm out here, I may as well talk a little bit. So he said Flair was a wounded animal. He knew it was just a matter of time before he got that world title. Said Lex Luger was losing sleep because he couldn't beat Nikita, and he went on for a while, and he was all over the place. Fabulous Freebirds versus Thunderfoot 1 and Thunderfoot 2 and Gladiator 1.
I was hoping it'd be Thunderfoot 1, Thunderfoot 2, and Gladiator 2.
That would be funnier? Anyway, Atlanta fans love the Freebirds. Buddy Roberts did the funniest missile dropkick I ever saw in this match. It wasn't the worst, it was the funniest. He goes to the middle rope, and he doesn't really jump. He just kind of throws his feet out. He stays at the same level, and his feet hit the Gladiator in the head, and then suddenly he just drops straight down to earth at 100 miles an hour.
I thought that maybe we could call him the Fattiator or the Glandiator.
Gladiate it.
Is it bullying in 2017?
Gladiate everything.
He was fat and he was terrible. He was no gladiator.
So they go to commercial. They come back just in time to see Terry Gordy break a Thunderfoot's neck with a belly-to-back suplex. Just put him right in his head. And then, okay, here's another example. There's a lethal-looking suplex, and then Gordy lifts the man up onto his shoulders, and Michael Hayes hits an axe handle and pins him. An axe handle. I've never seen a man pinned with an axe handle before. Freebirds cut a promo about the match against the Horsemen and the Omni. Michael Hayes runs his mouth about how they got Jack Daniels waiting for him. Terry Gordy says, I'm no rich man, but I got 2 fists and 2 legs, and I can kick your ass. And then Buddy Roberts just goes. It's like he took 3 minutes worth of breath, and they pulled the string and just let him go. I have no earthly idea what he was talking about. He did mention, you know that movie, The Birds? That was a horrifying movie. And then he kept on going. I laughed until I cried. It was a great, awful promo.
So, where to begin? First off, Bad Street USA, have I mentioned it's terrible?
You have been wrong before, yes.
Like, who does the lead vocals? Bela Lugosi?
Michael Hayes.
Vincent Price? It sounds like a Halloween parody song. It's atrocious. So, luckily, he can't sing, but he can talk. Michael Hayes cuts a great promo. Then there's Terry Gordy, who's just a hilarious big lunkhead.
In a great way, yes.
And then there is fucking Buddy Roberts screaming like a madman. I mean, he's just screaming. Like, he's not shouting a promo. He's not ranting and raving. He's doing a promo, but he's screaming at the top of his lungs every word.
Yes.
And you can see Michael Hayes in the background. He's waiting for the guy to just take one breath so he can snatch the mic away and end this promo. This act is astonishing.
It's amazing.
It is astonishing.
Vladimir Pietrov beat Gary Phelps in seconds with a Russian sickle. And then it was time for the best crazy Ric Flair promo ever. He says, tonight... Actually, first he says, sometimes I come out here and I get a little lost. I get a little distracted. I talk about the women and the cars and the money. And I get distracted by all that. But that's not really what it's about. Tonight we're putting the women, the cars, and the money aside. Tonight is about being the best. And you know how you're the best? You got one of these. And he holds up the world championship. He says, I'm going to teach Jimmy Garvin soon that you can't call yourself the best until you've got one of these. And he's got a match as the Freebirds to plug. He makes fun of Terry Gordy for talking about not having a lot of money. Threatens to break Gordy's leg. Says, Michael Hayes, first time I met you wasn't that long ago. You were just a nervous punk begging me to shake your hand. And then he talks about Dark Journey. He says, Tony, come with me. And he approaches the people. And he looks around. And he picks out a guy and says, come on up here. And this fella comes up on camera. And Flair puts his arm around the man all buddy-buddy and says, you'd like a night with Dark Journey, wouldn't you? And the guy perfectly just says, yes, sir. And Flair says, well, you can't have her because she's Tully Blanchard's. And the man smiles, and he hangs his head, and he shuffles back to his seat. And Flair goes on and on. Tony Schiavone died. He was broken by this. So Flair plugs the NBA Finals.
Yeah, he's talking about the NBA playoffs. He's cutting a promo on the Celtics.
On Magic Johnson, what Larry Bird's going to do to him. And he was done.
This was unbelievable. There is nobody that cuts promos like this.
No.
Nobody. There is nobody on this planet today that can cut a promo like this guy.
To be fair, there wasn't any before him either. There's only one Ric Flair.
This was amazing. He buried Hayes. Just a complete burial. You were nothing but a geek, and I was the biggest star of all. Buries Gordy. Gordy's talking about he's got 2 fists and 2 legs, and Flair's just like, you're going to come out of it with one leg. Totally ignores Buddy Roberts. Has nothing to say to Buddy Roberts. Drags this dude out of the crowd. Like, this dude didn't really want to come up, but Flair's like going into the crowd to drag this guy on a TV. Buries this guy. Like, Schiavone's looking over at David Crockett. David Crockett, they probably had to resuscitate him, I would guess. It was amazing television. And there was more to come.
Oh, yes. Barry Windham beat Gladiator 2 in seconds with a lariat. Didn't even bother to take his vest off. Nikita Koloff cut a promo on Lex Luger, said, yes, you are big, and yes, you are bad, but you are not so bad without the other horseman by your side. He promised to beat him. Ron Garvin versus Rick Sullivan.
It's a Barry Windham thing, by the way. They're doing the same thing with Barry that they used to do with Magnum.
Yeah.
Which is, you got to pay to see them work.
Yes.
Like, if they're on TV, they're going to do a quick nothing match, or they're not even going to be on TV like Dusty. Or they'll do a quick nothing match like Flair's been the last couple of weeks. If you want to see these guys have long matches, you got to go to the arena. Unless you're Jimmy Garvin. Then this dude wrestles for an hour on your TV every week.
Pretty much.
And it's not very good.
So Rick Sullivan is a new jobber, but he's not like the others. He's tall, he's got a body, and he appeared motivated. It looked like he had the idea, hey, if I make Ron Garvin look good, they'll bring me back to work more, and if I make that guy look good, maybe eventually I'll get promoted to something. So he came out here determined to do all he could to make Ron Garvin look as good as possible. Not only went like 4 moves. It was like a backdrop and a suplex and then the knockout punch. He takes this awesome corkscrew bump for the knockout punch, but he lands in his face. And Garvin says, rather than roll him over, I'm going to pull him up and punch him again. So he pulled him up, punched him again, and he won. And Garvin and Windham cut a promo on the Midnight Express, and they vowed to win the U.S. tag titles. They also said they promised we can't win the tag titles unless we take care of Jim Cornette first. So Jimmy Cornette's going to be fit to be tied. A clue. Footage from the UWF, where Steve Williams pinned Eddie Gilbert, but then was immediately attacked by Dick Murdoch. 2 awesome things on this. First of all, Jim Ross on commentary.
Oh, my God. Jim Ross was 34 years old. I wrote a young Jim Ross, but he was 34. But still, who is as good as Jim Ross was when he was just 34 years old doing this?
Never anyone.
Nobody?
Ever.
My God, I just listened to this and I thought, I'm going to watch Raw tomorrow, and it's going to be just a bunch of dorks in the announce booth, half asleep, not paying attention to a goddamn thing, and acting like they'd like to be anywhere but calling the action on Raw. And here's this guy just losing his mind at the temerity of Dick Murdoch doing this terrible deed to his buddy Dr. Death.
Number 2, Gilbert held Williams' arm on a chair, and Murdoch came off the top rope with a stomp. This fucking stomp. This looked so awesome. He comes flying down, and his foot comes down on Williams' arm, and it just stays there. He's planted his boot into Steve Williams' arm. It looked so great. He was making things look believable and realistic. Used to be a key part of this job. This was awesome. Dylan and Luger came out for a promo. This is not as bad as Barry Windham screwing up Western States Heritage title several times, but Lex could never get Great American Bash right. It was always the Summer Bash, over and over again. So he says it's his destiny to be the next U.S. champion. He's going to beat Nikita Koloff, and then it says it's time to put on a show. I cut these promos behind this podium. Today we're going to get a wide shot. And he steps out from behind the podium. He orders the cameraman to back up and zoom out so he gets his whole muscular body out there. And he's flexing. The women are going crazy. And he keeps on talking. And we still have the full body shot. But did you notice what Lex was doing as he talked here?
Seemed to be adjusting his total package.
He was tapping his dick over and over again. And he was fast about it. It's not like he was grabbing his junk and adjusting it, but he talked, tap. And I thought to myself, did he just touch his dick? And like 30 seconds would go by, he'd do it again, and I he did. He touched his dick. And like 3 or 4 more times he did. What happened here?
I don't know. Maybe he's got a twitch.
He may have. That was creepy. Then we had Flair and Luger versus Ricky Nelson and John Savage.
My God, they put Ric Flair on TV for free for once. Why bother?
He won in a minute.
Yeah, there's no point.
Then all the horsemen came out to celebrate together. This damn logo was on the screen again. This logo, by this point, was the visual equivalent of the NWO theme on Nitro. They showed it over and over and over again. So this promo was the absolute shit. This was so great. Arn's talking about how great they all are, how dangerous they all are, how fucked all the good guys are. Meanwhile, Flair is just cackling away. Lex is in the background flexing. Dark Journey is just posing for the camera, doing a 360. Tully's there in his suit, beaming, so proud and happy to be a part of this group. These people were having so much fun. And there is no person on the face of the earth who could have watched this promo and not thought to themselves, God, I wish I was a horseman. I want to be a horseman so bad. It was the best. Flair gets in a line here at the end because they don't have time to kill. Flair just says, Dark Journey will be the first to tell you, Michael Hayes, he's not a real man. Questioned his manhood and said Dark Journey would know. They're laughing, they're cackling, and posing. And it was the best thing ever. The Horsemen were so awesome.
You know, people talk about short attention spans in 2017, but there was zero downtime on this show. It was a whirlwind. It was a 1 hour show, which means it was probably an hour and 15 minutes with commercials. It was a little shorter than usual. I guess not quite an hour and a half, but anyway, they just one segment after another. Boom, 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 boom. Show flew by. And here's the thing that's the most important takeaway of this show. Everybody needs to think about this. This seemed like the hottest promotion ever. Like, at the end of the show, the Horsemen are just going crazy. The people are going nuts. It's an amazing act. There are all of these great workers. There are all of these great promos. There's all of these great angles. It seemed like the hottest promotion there'd ever been. They were spiraling towards destruction. Like, next year they have to sell.
Yeah.
Next year. WCW 98, it was the same thing. They were, I mean, you could watch the TV and see that they were making a bunch of mistakes, but they were the biggest promotion in the history of the world at that point. 3 years later, dead. 3 years later. So we had one promotion that was dead a year later. We had another promotion that was dead 3 years later. I'm not saying that WWE is dead in 3 years or anything like that. I'm not saying that New Japan's going to be dead in 3 years, but listen to me. The shit could end at any time. It could end at any time. Bonnie Hammer could go skydiving and her parachute wouldn't open and something terrible would occur and she'd be out at USA and they may cancel wrestling. Anything can happen. So, I just think people should remember that. And no, of course I'm not hoping that Bonnie Hammer falls out of a helicopter. I just had to say something. She could retire to an island and be happy for the rest of her life. How about that? But anything can happen, and this could all end at any time. So everyone should stop getting so cocky about all of this. Oh, you're complaining too much about this and that. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. I've heard everything's fine about WCW and about TNA, and I'm sure people were talking about everything's fine about NWA in 1987. It's not always okay. Nothing lasts forever. Roller derby died. Everything, and we're all gonna die. You hear me? Comet could be coming right now, heading at the earth. Count your blessings and go jump on the trampoline. Let me play a song. I think they're the colognes now. I got it.
Took me a minute.
Took me a minute.
Took me a minute to get that.
All right.
It's outstanding. It's going to be stuck in my head all day, too.
All right.
Where were we? Retro NWA. The June 13th, 1987 episode. A very different episode. A good chunk of this, about half the show, at least, was devoted entirely to the Dusty Rhodes Tully Blanchard $100,000 winner-take-all TV title match for Greensboro. They showed the entrances. I'm not sure why Dusty came out for this match in North Carolina in a New York Yankees jacket, but who am I to question Dusty Rhodes? Came out with Magnum. People just loved them both. They did the intros, and then the usual Saturday night credits package rolled. Ronnie Garvin was there for a promo, looking as fancy and dapper as is possible for Ronnie Garvin to look. Hair was all done up, fancy t-shirt on. He said that Dusty should be the TV champion. Dusty should have $100,000. Promised that the Garvins, the Rock and Rolls, and Nikita Koloff, they all had Dusty's back.
So really all we knew at this point was that somehow Dusty won but didn't win. We had no details.
Even that is kind of guessing. All we knew is Dusty was not champion but should be. Yeah.
Isn't that exactly what I just said?
No, you said he won.
Oh, Tully won.
Yeah. Kendall Windham versus Art Pritz.
Dude. God bless Kendall Windham, but he looked absolutely terrible in this match. He was unbelievably skinny. He was 20 years old at the time.
Oh, wow.
And I was just watching him, and I was just thinking, I can't believe a man this skinny is actively working in this business. Like, as a guy who wins. And then I realized he's much thicker than Zack Sabre Jr.
See, this is the key. That was my thought, too. Is he, for many, many years, as a wrestling fan, I thought Kendall Windham was the skinniest guy I ever saw. And I don't know if currently it's Zack Sabre. There may have been somebody in the middle there. But the big difference is Zack Sabre's wrestling in 2017, when in general wrestlers are much smaller. Kendall Windham was wrestling here in 1987, the land of the giants.
Yep.
He looked like a string of spaghetti. Also, he was quite definitely the worst wrestler in this match. Art Pritz worked circles around him. Kendall won with a bulldog. The Rock and Rolls cut a promo hyping up the Great American Bash. They offered support to Dusty Rhodes. And then Schiavone interviewed Jim Crockett Jr. And Jim Crockett explained what the stipulations and terms and what indeed the match beyond itself is.
Not much of a public speaker, this Jim Crockett Sr. or Jr.
No.
He kind of mumbled his way through this. I was impressed that he knew both teams off the top of his head. He didn't have any notes, didn't have any paper to read.
He had the basic physical structure of what the ring setup would be. He knew the 5 men on each team.
Yeah.
And otherwise, to be honest, I lost. He lost my attention span.
Yeah, he did. Listen. War Games is not that complicated, okay? No. But the way he explained it, it was like somebody was explaining some random TNA match that was overly complicated.
Yes.
By halfway through, you were just thinking, Is it that hard? Like, this is way too complicated for a wrestling match. It's really quite simple, as Mike Tenay once said. And it actually is.
In this case.
But David Crockett, or Jim Crockett, I screw these guys up. Jim Crockett Jr. butchered it. Now, he did announce the important point that the match, when we move to the match beyond, it is submit or surrender.
Yes.
Now, for a long, long time, I was always trying to figure out what in the hell is the difference between submit and surrender. They're the same thing. But then I figured it out. A submission is when you give up. Surrender would be when you surrender on behalf of your team.
Ah.
It's like throwing in the towel.
I see.
So if you had Wang in a camel clutch and he was on my team, and I was like, Vinny's going to break his back and you know the rest.
I do. Believe me, I do.
I could surrender on behalf of Wang.
Yeah.
Or I could allow him to be submitted.
More likely you would join in.
Yeah, I know. Are you kidding me? Get out of here.
Boot him in the face.
Well, the point is, it is submit or surrender. So if someone's being slaughtered, like, you can surrender on behalf of the team.
Yes.
And not be the guy who's getting slaughtered.
Yes. So for those
He didn't explain any of this, by the way.
No.
That's me doing this on your behalf.
Yes.
Listeners.
So the teams are Dusty, Nikita, the Road Warriors, and Paul Ellering on Team 1, and the Four Horsemen and J.J. Dillon on Team 2.
Well, that just doesn't seem fair. You know
Paul
what I
Ellering,
mean?
as managers go, Paul Ellering is much more imposing than J.J. Dillon.
You don't
Although Dillon
say.
had worked for years.
It kind of makes you think you might know what the finish could be. If you didn't know any better.
If you didn't know any better. So do we need to explain what War Games is? There's probably people listening who don't know. There's two rings side by side. Cage around both rings and with a roof on top. Two men start.
Now, hold on. I got to cut you off right there.
Okay.
Because as you explain the rules here, they aired the goddamn spookiest promo ever.
Well, before that.
You would think this was Halloween Havoc. But there's a point to this, Vinny.
Okay.
It's so spooky and overdramatic. But the guy doing the voiceover made a point that went over the head of Vince Russo and every geek booking TNA whenever they did these stupid war games throughout history. And I'm sure WCW at the end, but I don't remember. He said, and I quote, "A coin flip determines which team dominates."
Yes.
The coin flip does not determine merely who starts, who the next man is in the ring. The coin flip determines which team dominates. Why? Because two men start, and then men enter one at a time from the opposite teams.
Exactly.
So it's going to be 2-on-1, and then someone will come in to even the odds. Then it will be 3-on-2, and someone will come in to even the odds. You couldn't have a more basic psychology.
No.
I can't even tell you how many times TNA tried this and fucked it up because nobody figured out at the time that the coin flip, in fact, determines which team dominates.
That is important.
How can you screw this up?
Well, as we found out.
Well, you can do it by being morons.
Yes.
But the answer is you can't screw it up.
No.
Unless you're a moron.
Unless you're a moron. All War Games really is, it's a series of run-ins. The bad guys run in to get the cheap advantage. The good guys run in to even the odds. Over and over again. Then they do a finish. So he explains the rules. He explains the teams. And then it's time for this epic cage construction video. It's two guys working in a dark warehouse. There's like one spotlight on them as they're welding and warping steel into shape. And it's interspersed with clips of all the guys in the match, the Road Warriors and the Horsemen and Dusty. They're all just killing dudes. And this fucking voiceover guy. I concluded by the end of this cage was being built in Isengard, and Saruman himself was doing the narration. This was the best video package ever. You know, we always say WWF always had the better video packages than WCW. Wrong. Not always.
This one time.
This was a Hall of Fame moment. This fucking ruled. So we had most of the Dusty Rhodes-Tully Blanchard match. It went apparently about 17 or 18 minutes based on what the timekeeper said, of which we saw about 12. You know how in WWE today, and really in most promotions, there's a wrestling ring, and then there's the fans, and there's like 6 feet in between them? These guys had a wrestling ring and then 20 feet of wide open space to work with. Very strange. So, they're doing this match. They're both working each other's legs. They're both selling the leg. There was a point where both guys tried to cross body, and they had an epic collision in the middle of the ring. Finally, Dusty avoids the slingshot suplex several times. He hits one of his own. He hits Tully's own finisher. He makes the cover. Tommy Young drops down. Tommy counts 1. Tommy counts 2. Tommy counts 3. And then, in this order, Tully gets a foot on the ropes. Dusty is happy. All the fans are happy. Tommy Young sits back. He thinks his job is done. But then, as Dusty gets off of Tully and steps backwards, he is no longer blocking a view of Tully's leg. And Tommy points in the leg, and his hand goes to his mouth. He knows he has made a mistake. Now, before anything can happen, JJ springs into action. Magnum TA is out there guarding the money. JJ runs up, yanks the bag of money out of his hands, runs to the back. This is theft. Do you know what happens when you steal things? The cops come after you. So cops chased JJ to the back. Of course, Dusty also had to chase him to the back, because if there's one thing Dusty knows, is that if you want a job done right, you do it yourself. So Dusty disappears to the back. Which means Dusty misses Tommy Young restarting the match. And Tommy counts Dusty out as the camera is doing a fade back and forth from the ring to the back, where Dusty is in the parking lot hunting for JJ. And Tommy counts him out. The bell is rung, and Tully is awarded the title and the money.
I got a lot to say about this. First off, let's talk about Magnum. These poor guys at ringside. Kane.
I have a lot to say about Magnum later, but yeah.
Can't use his right arm at all. Does slap Tully at one point during a stare down. Dusty was not involved in an automobile accident, but my God, he's barely mobile in the ring. He's not doing a thing. There's the 15-minute mark. He looks absolutely, utterly exhausted. Can barely walk.
He was doing the spot at the end, which made sense in all senses, because both guys are selling exhaustion. Of course, in Dusty's case, it was real exhaustion. But he hits the big bionic elbow, then he retreats to the corner to sit down and rest. Until he gets back up, Dusty hits an elbow, goes back to the corner to rest. That was awesome.
So, they do the finish. Dusty hits him with his own move. And, of course, the foot's on the rope right after the pinfall. Mm-hmm. I swear to God, I thought I was watching UFC in 2017. This was every blown referee call you've ever seen. Basically, and listen, I know I'm jumping the gun here, but Tommy Young later explained this, and he may as well have been any random referee from any random UFC show. He said, I counted the pin. He didn't use these exact words, but basically what he said is, Dusty's enormous fat body was in the way, and when he moved it, I saw that the dude's foot was on the ropes. We don't have instant replay here in wrestling. I thought I made the right call, and therefore I'm standing by it. And what's amazing about it was, he made a bad call. Like when they showed the footage again, it was clear it was a bad call. The foot was on the rope after the 3 count.
Yes.
But to him, he made the right call in the moment. And that was to restart the match. He didn't do anything wrong. He said, we don't have instant replay. Mm-hmm. We have to think in the heat of the moment. And I had to make a decision, and I made what I thought was the right decision. And in my mind, that decision stands. I'm sorry. I see the footage now. I made a mistake. It doesn't matter. This is what happened. This is what I saw. Do you know how many times I've made this argument for UFC referees about late stoppages and not stopping it quick, whatever the case might be? I've said it a million times. You as a referee, you must make a call in a split second. You have to. You don't get instant replay. You're not the fan sitting at home rewinding it 50 times and getting more and more angry with each rewind. That ref didn't get any rewinds. This was, like, the funny thing was, as soon as it happened, I was like, these fuckers just don't get it. One more bullshit call in a big-time main event. They're sinking the ship. But it was so creative. They did such a good job if you're going to do a screw job finish. And then, like, you know they're going to get theirs in War Games in a month. So at the end of the day, it really didn't bother me because the Horsemen were so cocky because of this, and they were going to get beaten in the end. Mm-hmm. But man, as far as like screw job finishes, this was a very, very, very creative one. I don't think it was the right thing to do at this point. There were just too many of them. But it was a creative one.
They were doing a lot of them. So, Dusty eventually returns to ringside, still perplexed, gets to the mic, demands Crockett, bring me my blank money. He was censored many times throughout this. He storms to the back. Shivani's there trying to interview Dusty and Magnum, and this was amazing. Dusty's just cursing up a storm. Doesn't know what's going on. Wants to know where the money is. Magnum apologizes to Dusty. Because Magnum, you recall, Dusty recruited Magnum to be the man in charge of the money. It was Magnum's job to watch the money, and Magnum's the one who let JJ get away with it. Magnum says, Dusty, I'm sorry, let him get the money. I promise I'll get it back. And Dusty snaps at him. Magnum, you are in no shape to get it back. And he immediately regretted it, but it was out there. He couldn't take it back. And Magnum, it's been 6 months since the car accident now. And Magnum looks down at what used to be a Mighty Warrior's body. He might weigh 150 pounds at this point. And Magnum has to admit, shit, he's right. I'm in no shape to get it back. And Dusty is now so sad. And they hug. Because Magnum is in no shape. And it sucks. It just sucks. Everything sucks.
It was the saddest thing I've ever seen.
Oh my God.
When poor Magnum, he'd taken the cast off and his arm is just hanging there limp. And he feels so bad for not holding on to the money. He's got one arm legit.
Yeah.
Like, there's part of me that just thought, this is kind of so tasteless. You know what I mean? But I'm sure Magnum was all for it. And it was supposed to be heart-wrenching. That was the whole idea.
Yeah.
They were using it for a storyline. I've never heard Magnum say that he felt bad about doing it. Like, I've never heard one criticism from Magnum. So if he was fine with doing it and it played into the storyline and all sides were comfortable with it, then, I mean, it was like the most heart-wrenching thing I ever saw in wrestling. Like, I couldn't even believe my eyes. That was a work, obviously. Not people actually dying, but...
Sure.
But he did actually get in a car accident. I mean, that was all
He
legit,
almost died.
He almost died. It was heartbreaking.
It was very...
Like, how could you boo Dusty
ever again
after this? And he hugs Magnum, and he feels so bad. Magnum feels so bad. This was a pro wrestling storyline tragedy.
Yeah.
Is what this was.
Yeah. So then it was time for the Tommy Young interview. And Tommy is...
I love that he added, I'm 5-time referee of the year.
First, he began by giving his credentials. I'm a 5-time ref of the year, very experienced, had many big matches. And he explained what he did. He counted 3, then he saw the foot on the ropes after Dusty moved, so he restarted the match, and Dusty was not there. He was forced to count Dusty out. They say, well, now we're going to show you the video. And they show the video, and like you say, Tommy says, well, I need to apologize to Mr. Crockett, and say I'm sorry to Mr. Rhodes, but there are no replays in pro wrestling. As far as I'm concerned, my decision is final. And Crockett says, look, we, the National Wrestling Alliance, we are going to have an inquiry into this match and also into Tommy Young's status as referee. So they go back to the studio.
You know what I was thinking when I saw this? It's not going to happen now, but this would be a perfect finish for like Randy Orton and Jinder Mahal. I mean, you don't have the money on the line, so there'd have to be a way to distract. Like, the Bollywood boys would have to do something, or something. But this would be...
They're in St. Louis. His family could be there.
His family... Well, you'd have to have something where after he got the pin, he went after the Bollywood boys or something.
Yeah.
Maybe they would go after somebody. They could go after his dad.
Yeah.
And then he goes after them, and meanwhile, he's getting counted out. I mean, this would actually be a perfect finish for that match. Because they don't do that kind of bullshit screw job as often as they were doing it.
This is the key.
Yeah.
Dusty was doing this
Yeah,
in big matches for years.
A dusty finish is a great finish. Not when you do it every night or all the time. Like, it seems, as we watch these retro shows, every time there's a dusty match, we see this.
There's a lot of them.
There's too many of them. But since we haven't seen something like this in, I don't know, 20 years now, whatever it's been, 30 years, however long ago this was, this would be a great finish to Orton versus Jinder Mahal. Randy hits the RKO, 1, 2, 3, gets the pin. Referee doesn't see that he put the foot on the ropes afterwards, restarts the match. Randy goes after the Bollywood boys. Referee starts counting, counts out Randy, and Jinder retains the title.
That'd be awesome.
It actually would be brilliant.
So Nikita cuts a promo. He also says Dusty should be TV champion. He promises to beat Lex Luger on the Bash. And then he says, now I need some clarifications on this whole Match Beyond thing. So Tony explains the rules again in great detail.
Well, to be honest, the way that Crockett described it, and the fact that he's a storyline Russian, that the English is not his first language.
Also true.
I buy this.
Yeah. But the key to this is when Nikita realizes the only ways to win are submit or surrender. He says, somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody is going to get hurt bad. He promised the Horsemen pain like they had never felt before. You got to remember, too, pre-UFC, losing a match by submission was like the ultimate humiliation. Good guys never did it unless they're just blacked out from a sleeper. And bad guys hardly ever did either. Submission was a big, big deal in 1987. Jimmy Garvin versus Rick Sullivan. So Rick Sullivan goes from one Garvin to the other on these two shows.
Announcers are busy talking about David Allen Coe, paying no attention to the match. It was like Raw.
Basically. And Sullivan took one huge backdrop, and then Garvin pinned him with a brainbuster. Jim Cornette and the Midnight Express came out for a promo. Cornette is bragging about surviving cage matches against Ronnie Garvin. Promises to never get in the ring again unless he is matched up against a small child who he can beat. So Jim Cornette is to wrestling as you are to dodgeball, apparently.
That's right.
Now, I mentioned earlier that usually the women they try to find women who are into the men, and it doesn't always work. These women loved them some Midnight Express. And based on the way Stan and Bobby were scanning the crowd, I believe the Midnight Express loved them right back. They challenged the Rock and Rolls to a title match, but I'm looking at Stan Lane. He's going the Triple H, Harley Race, Lemmy mustache.
Sure.
He's got his aviators on. I'm thinking, this is like the exact same look Joey Ryan does now, ironically. But for Stan, it was authentic.
Sure.
And for Stan, it really was cool. That'd be hard to believe.
Hey, listen. Rude's mustache.
Yeah.
Unbelievably great. The mustache even looked good on number 1 Paul Jones.
Sure.
He looked way better with that mustache. Yeah. Some dudes can pull it off. Most dudes can't.
So remember the Horseman logo from the last show? And how I said it would get even better? The Horseman logo comes up, but now there's also a fanfare of trumpets.
It's so great.
Burr, burr, burr.
It's the end of the world.
It's the
Horseman and the trumpets. Now listen, Flair, first off, he's so happy about Tully. He's overjoyed that Tully won. He actually says his foot may have been on the rope before, during, or after the pinfall. It doesn't matter.
No.
And I'm like, actually, Rick, it does matter. But not to Rick.
No.
What mattered was his foot was on the ropes at some point in the evening. And therefore, that pinfall shouldn't count.
Yeah.
He promotes War Games like, he literally said, somebody might get killed.
Killed.
That's what he said.
Put to death.
We're a month away from this show. They are going full bore on every show into this War Games. It's masterful promotion.
I already can't wait to watch this.
It doesn't matter what else is on the show.
No.
There's going to be a full card. It doesn't matter. There's War Games, the match beyond. Somebody might get killed. It's the Dream Team against the Horsemen or the Superpowers or whatever they were calling them. I mean, this is like the biggest match of all time. Everybody's talking about it all throughout this show.
It's been 3 segments, and it already seems like way bigger than
anything.
Yeah.
Flair's going out of his mind. It's one of those deals where the Horsemen in the ring waiting for their match, and they briefly cut to the Horsemen. Uh-huh. I always think the Horsemen don't think the camera's going to be on them.
Yeah.
Tully for sure didn't. Tully is a 10-year-old child watching Ric Flair. He's got the biggest smile on his face. He's absolutely marking out for Ric Flair's promo he's cutting here. It was it brought such joy to my heart.
So it was Tully, Arn, and Lex versus Cougar Jay and Mike Force and Chance McQuaid. And the Horsemen ran wild, and Lex got the win with the torture rack. So the Horsemen then cut a promo. Now, there's no commercial break in here. They do the match. They do a replay. And then the Horsemen are at the podium. They did the logo and the trumpets again. So Tully explains, if your leg is on the ropes, the pin does not count. Don't get mad at me because you're incompetent, and walked out of the building. So they're running their mouths for a while. And this has actually been going on for a few weeks now. But it's 1987, and there's no Twitter, and there is no Facebook. But God damn it, there is dot matrix printing.
Oh, yeah.
So the fans are all making signs at home. They probably took 30 minutes to print out, because I had one of these. They're slow and loud as hell.
Oh, my God. They started last week printing that thing out.
Yeah. And they've been in the signs forever. Go Midnight Express, USA, USA, whatever. Well, as the Horsemen are ranting and raving about how great they are, like, I forget who it was, Lex and Arn or whoever, but they go into the crowd and they go get one of these dot matrix signs.
No, it's Flair.
Was it Flair?
Ric Flair.
The world champion.
In the middle of this promo, Flair vanishes. And all of a sudden, you see him just shuffling past one of the cameras. And I'm like, what in the world was he doing out there? Like, giving some girl his number or his hotel card? I guess he didn't have those keys or whatever. So he comes back, and with such unbridled joy, he gives the dot matrix to the other guy.
Yeah, and they all hold it up.
And they all hold it up over there. It's the most ghetto sign. It says, like...
4 Horsemen number 1 or something.
Yeah. And he is so happy.
Yes.
Flair, I'm sure, had never seen a printer in his life.
No.
He had no idea this technology. But, man, he loved it.
Flair did all his communicating via stone tablet. How great were the 4 Horsemen in 1987?
They were so awesome. The fans... First, everyone's chanting for the Horsemen. Then there's a group that starts chanting for Dusty. Then the Horsemen, people drown them out again. Same thing I said earlier. It seems like the hottest promotion ever. It just is absolutely on fire. And they're losing money hand over fist.
That's a small detail.
Hand over fist. But man, what a TV show. What a crew they had.
They were great.
This is the good old days.
Oh, yeah.
Man, oh, man.
I vote when 1987 is over, we just start over and watch 1987 again.
You know, Dave has made this comparison before, but it's totally true. I feel like this feels like New Japan today. If you watch New Japan today, it's the exact same thing. It feels so hot. The fans are just, the big stars are just, I can't even explain it. It's very much like NWA 86, 87. Hopefully they're not running into an iceberg. Hopefully they're not out of business in a year. I don't think they're going to be, but...
And there will be gorilla shit all over down there.
I hate doing that.
So, Retro NWA, June 20th, 1987.
And did you mention the weirdness where not only did it buffer, but for a while there, like, the audio would continue, but the screen would be frozen?
I did mention that.
I wasn't sure.
Okay.
That was bizarre. I've never had that before.
I haven't seen that either, actually. In fact, I actually thought...
I thought it was on the tape.
Yeah, because usually when because there's a lot of old wrestling tapes on the network, when there's some kind of production snafu, they will run a little graphic saying we are doing the best we can with the original copies or whatever. And that does not appear this time. And in fact, when you went back and rewound, suddenly there was video and audio.
Yeah, it worked the second time.
Yeah.
It was bizarre. I've never seen that ever in watching the network.
So, June 20th, 1987, they opened with the false finish of the Dusty Rhodes Tully Blanchard TV title match. Then the announcers were running down the show when Jimmy Garvin interrupted them. He was so excited about the Great American Bash, he just couldn't wait. Promised it was just a matter of time for Ric Flair. Stopped to kiss his wife. Said there's no chance Flair was going to take his woman. So hold on to your hats. Because for the next 2 hours, you're going to see the greatest pro wrestling in the world. Jimmy Garvin should open every show. He's a great hype man.
It's very weird. It's just very weird. WWE and the things that they are all weird about. Like Justin Roberts was writing in his book about how they feel that the audience only has so many pops in them.
Okay.
Which is ridiculous. If you've ever watched like a New Japan show that's like twice as long, it has twice as many pops. But anyway, Jimmy Garvin comes out here and the crowd's going crazy. And so that motivated him to go crazy. And then that made the crowd go even crazier. They were out of their minds at the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
And then they were out of their minds at the end of the show.
Indeed.
Funny, they didn't run out of pops.
No.
I don't know how to explain that. Except maybe it's not true.
Barry Windham versus Brody Chase. I don't know if they mic'd the crowd differently this week, but that crowd was loud. In fact, by the end, I'm pretty sure they were loud for everything, because they actually got louder than this. So Barry beat the crap out of him, much longer than it needed to be. Brody actually made a comeback, and Barry finally won with a lariat.
Barry decided to wrestle like Brad Armstrong today. So Brody Chase was a low-rent Bobby Eaton. He had a mustache today. Barry actually hit a superplex at one point, and the fans, they just assumed it was the finish, and Brody Chase kicked out.
Yeah, this happened.
Kept going, and finally hit the lariat for the pin. Clearly, this was a full 2-hour show today.
That's true. Then Barry cut a promo saying the Bash was the greatest thing to ever happen to professional wrestling. He called out Tully Blanchard and Big Bubba Rogers for their championship matches on the tour. Jimmy Valiant and Lasertron versus Thunderfoot 1 and Thunderfoot 2.
Gotta say one thing about that Barry promo real quick.
All right.
He was so tired.
He'd wrestled a long time.
Mumbled his way through another promo. A nothing promo. He is not holding up well watching these old shows. Like Barry was, oh man, he's going to be the next Ric Flair. He's going to be like this big babyface star. He's tall. He's a good worker. I don't see it. And it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Now I know why. Really going back and watching it. He was very vanilla.
There is more to come.
Yeah.
So, Jimmy Valiant and Lasertron versus Thunderfoot 1 and Thunderfoot 2.
Not the Thunderfeet.
Not the Thunderfeet or even the Thunderfoots.
The Thunderfoots, yeah.
Thunderfoot 1. Not even Thunderfoot 1 and 2.
No.
Thunderfoot 1 and Thunderfoot 2. Maybe they're not related at all. I hadn't thought of that until now. So, we're off to a hot start here. One of them dropped Lasertron on his head immediately. And then Lasertron tried the headlock, head scissors, double takeover spot, and Teddy Long got right in the way. Like, you remember Christmas Vacation when they drive the car under the semi-truck? That was Teddy Long here, in between the Thunderfeet, with Lasertron going over the top of his head.
My favorite things in this match were the very first thing that happened was the Thunderfoot grabbed Lasertron, and he lifts him up and gives him an atomic drop. And then he covers him.
Yeah.
That's the first move of the match.
I'm going to pin Lasertron
Immediately.
in 10 seconds with an atomic drop.
Yes.
Yes.
Then they had a spot where Valiant tagged in, and one of his spots is he does an arm wringer and he pulls the guy down by the hair. He does in every match. Well, he did it in this match. Thunderfoot has no hair.
Yes.
But Jimmy Valiant grabbed him where he would have hair, and he yanked, and the Thunderfoot bumped as if he had hair.
Sure.
How do people believe this was real?
You can say that about any Jimmy Valiant match. Lasertron did a standing frog splash, which I have never seen before, and I believe I will never see again. And then suddenly he just started bumping his ass off for the fucking Thunderfoots. They beat the hell out of him for a while. Then he hit a kick and just went on offense again. Even Jimmy Valiant got bored, shouting, and I quote, "Beat him, Laser! Right now! Pin him!" And it went on, and finally Valiant tagged in, hit the boogie woogie elbow, and won.
See, Jimmy Valiant does not care if this is a 90-minute show or a 2-hour show.
Not paid by the hour.
He's not paid by the hour. Get me in, beat the geeks, and get me out. More power to him.
We had Magnum TA and Dusty Rhodes doing a sit-down promo.
I could not believe this. Dusty Rhodes, who is supposed to be like the top babyface in the territory, even though everybody loves the Horseman and half the crowd boos Dusty. Dusty says, I haven't done a lot of interviews in 1986 and 1987 because, he says, I'm a very special person.
That's what he said. Yeah, the American dream.
Those were his exact words. What?
Yeah. So he announced that due to the screwjob finish in the other Tully Blanchard match, they were doing a rematch. They're going to take $100,000 in cash this time.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. I got stuff to say about that.
And hanging over the ring would be surrounded by barbed wire. They didn't say it was a ladder match, but it sure sounded like one with the addition of the barbed wire. So first one to get the money, I guess, wins. Then he says, talks about Magnum's accident. Says doctors told him he'd never walk again, but we all know how he is. And just like that, I'm going to regain the TV title. And Magnum says the same thing. I proved those doctors wrong. Dusty's going to prove his critics wrong. He's going to regain that TV title. And then Magnum TA says, I got plans for you, Tully Blanchard. I'm going to return to the ring and take care of business.
That was sad.
It had been 9 months since the accident.
Yep, that was sad.
Yep. They played the exact same War Games hype video. They played last week, and I think the week before that. They played it 3 times throughout the show.
I was going to say, hey, you got to hype it up.
Oh, believe me, they did. When this was done, I can't imagine any fan who had access chose not to watch this.
Yeah.
These were so awesome. And they came off so epic. This is not a sporting event. This is like biblical. This is good versus evil in a war. Who wouldn't watch that? It was the best. Nikita Koloff versus Hal Moore.
Let me read my notes for this match in their entirety. Nikita versus Hal Moore. He sucks, Vinny explains. Then Nikita flexes. I presume there was a match in there.
There was.
That's all I got out of this.
My favorite was when Hal Moore, you know how when you hit the ropes, you're supposed to, you reach out with your right hand and you grab the top rope or hook your arm over it in case the rope breaks. You can catch yourself. And then sometimes luchadors especially they'll drop their left hand and grab the middle rope with that hand just in case anything's go wrong. Hal ran to the ropes, turned, held both arms out in front of him, and then leaned back into the ropes.
Because, as I noted here, he sucks.
He may never have been in a wrestling ring before. Nikita beat him with a sickle. Shivani starts running down the bash dates. And then Jim Crockett arrived to address the Rhodes-Blanchard controversy.
I've got to talk about this. So, if you've been following our recaps, a couple of weeks ago, there was a meeting where Dusty was there, and Jim Crockett was there, and Magnum was there, and Tully was there, and JJ was there. And they were all there to hype up this match. And Dusty shows up. He's late because the Horsemen were very upset that Dusty was not on time. Dusty saunters in late, and he's got this giant satchel. And he opens up the satchel, and he pours $50,000 in cash onto the table. And they do this whole rigmarole, and eventually they agree that $100,000, $50,000 from Dusty, and $50,000 from the Horsemen, which, by the way, was their signing bonus from Crockett. It's all going to be up for grabs in this match. They're going to have a match. This is the key. And Magnum is going to be at ringside with the satchel. So, at the end of the match, the distraction which leads to Dusty being counted out after the finish that was so great that they could have done for Randy Orton versus Jinder, but nobody ever listens to me. They have JJ steal the bag and take off, and Dusty runs after them, right?
Right.
Okay. This week on the show, they explain that it wasn't cash in the bag, it was a check.
No.
It was a check.
The $50,000 in cash was in the bag. Tully's share of the money was in a check. So you're half right.
So he stole half the money, and stop payment was put on the check.
Yes.
Okay. Well, how is Jim Crockett Jr. going to get that $50,000 in cash back for this match?
Well, that he won't.
They're just going to bring it to the building? Because there's $100,000 on the line. They're starting over again.
They are. I suppose that they're just going to hold the $50,000 canceled check ransom and tell the Horsemen, if you want us to honor this check, you must bring the money back.
But we still got the issue of they've got to get that money back in case Dusty wins.
Yes.
This whole thing is a giant. It's preposterous now. It's ridiculous. I call it ridiculous.
No, because Tully still wants that canceled check. He wants them to uncancel it. He's going to be confident and cocky enough to risk the cash he stole to get the canceled check rewritten.
I see.
Yeah.
Huh. See, that's stupid of him. Because he's got $50,000 now.
But he wants $100,000.
I know, but he could end up with zero.
No, Brian, it's a horseman. Come on now.
These horsemen...
So they're hyping up this barbed wire money match.
Which, by the way, that also begs the question, so why wasn't the check cashed?
Apparently, I'll be honest, I've never canceled a check. But the Crockett...
It's a $20 fee.
Crockett called and said, I want to pay $20 then to cancel this check.
My question is, once... I don't know. It's just ridiculous. This was too much for me.
Okay. You know what was too much for me?
Mike Jackson, Alan Martin versus the Mod Squad.
You're actually jumping like
How'd I know that?
many segments ahead.
What are you talking about?
We're talking about the barbed wire match and the bash. And suddenly, here's a promo from the University of Oklahoma head football coach Barry Switzer. It's not like Jim Ross is even working there. They just randomly, with no explanation, ever, had a promo from Barry Switzer hyping up the Great American Bash. Why?
I don't know, but I'm thinking more about this check. Why didn't the Horsemen rush to the bank on Monday morning? What were they waiting for?
They were out partying.
These Horsemen. Come on now. Like, was it a race to the bank where, Jim Crockett's running to the bank to try and get the check canceled? They're running to the bank to try and get it cashed.
No, because the Horsemen, you see, it never occurred to them. They've been outsmarted, Brian.
I realize that.
Yeah. It didn't occur to them.
The problem is now I see them as baby faces because everybody else does. And I can't believe they're screwing this up so badly.
I see. Well, that is your undoing. Have the War Games hype video again. They're building a dome of steel in Atlanta. Can't wait. Now, Mod Squad versus Mike Jackson and Alan Martin.
Yeah, man, I jumped ahead a bunch of segments, apparently.
Yeah.
Zero.
Well, they have Barry Switzer in the War Games hype video. How great is Mike Jackson?
He was the best guy in the whole match.
By miles. And by the way, I don't know if you've noticed this. People have been sending us links. He's still working.
Oh, yeah.
Still kicking ass.
Yeah, still doing dives.
Still awesome. So, yeah, as noted, Mike Jackson was far and away the best guy in this match. Although I did like when Basher, he catches Martin like he's going to do a reverse atomic drop, like Bret Hart.
Hey, that's a killer move, apparently.
Only instead of dropping him, he just like suplexed him backwards onto his own face. It was awesome. This went on for a while, and they pinned Martin with a big elbow, which was everyone's finish in the 1980s, apparently.
This match was virtually unwatchable due to the buffering. This was where I was flipping my lid.
Yeah. Raging Bull and Ivan Koloff versus Todd Champion and Denny Brown.
So we have a Chris Champion and a Todd Champion.
That's the problem. I always...
Like, this jobber couldn't choose a different last name. Like, he's a jobber, and the other guy is one of their stars.
Yeah. I always used to make fun of WWE and WWF for changing guys' names. You can't be Shane Helms. You already got a Shane McMahon. You got to be Gregory Helms. We already got a Lance Storm. You can't be Lance Cade. You got to be Garrison Cade. And then I really noticed it a few years later in TNA when they have like 18 guys named Chris.
Well, there is that.
Yeah, okay.
But you know what? It's different because at least with WWE, like you had two stars. You know what I mean? Like, my point is, if you have a big star named Chris and you have another big star named Chris, like I think it's okay to have two Chris's. But if you got a big star whose name is Champion, but some geek comes in out of, I don't know, the school of Mike Jackson, like he needs a different name.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Sure.
Like there's a hierarchy.
Yeah.
We can only have one champion if the other one's a jobber.
So Denny Brown could work, and Todd Champion was at least really big with a body, so they gave him a lot of offense.
But he was clueless.
Well, he was very clueless, but he gave him a lot of stuff, and they went back and forth a lot. Raging Bull was awesome in this match. He starts out making fun of Denny Brown for being short. He's not that much shorter than Raging Bull. 4 inches, maybe. And then, of course, Denny Brown whips his ass, and he locks him in like an arm wringer, and Bull, with a look of utter confusion on his face, looks over at Paul Jones and points at Denny. Just like, what is this little fucker doing? It was awesome. This went on for a while, and eventually they won with an elevated Russian sickle. The Four Horsemen and their fanfare cut a promo. Have we played the fanfare on the show before?
We have not yet, but I'll try and get it for next
We need
time.
to load up the trumpet fanfare. It's It makes me laugh out loud every single time.
It's preposterous.
It's so wacky.
It's ridiculous.
And then
That was much worse than the actual fanfare.
Ric Flair's there cutting a promo all of a sudden.
Yes.
Well, in this case, it was Tully and JJ. Tully points out Dark Journey once again looking good, like his personal secretary always should. JJ Dillon always making him money. Didn't matter what Dusty said, he's still the TV champion. Runs down Magnum for making threats from almost beyond the grave. Then he says he's appalled that Jim Crockett canceled their check. And then they go to JJ.
JJ Dillon.
I have never seen him this fiery.
Him and I are on the same page about this.
Yes.
We could have, I got to get him on the show. I think the two of us could go for an hour.
I want to interview about the canceled check in
That's
1987.
right. We got to talk about this canceled check because he was on fire. I've never seen him like this.
And they called him a thief.
Yeah.
He was, I couldn't believe this hypocrisy. Just on fire. He talked about going to the bank.
Really think about this. When they called this guy a thief, the referee ruled in favor of JJ and Tully.
That's exactly the point he made.
How is he a thief?
That's exactly
He's absolutely right. How dare they cancel the check?
He talked about the joy in his eyes as they counted out the $50,000 in cash, and then the shame. He was embarrassed as they went to cash his check and said, "I'm sorry, sir, this check's been canceled."
Oh, Mike, can you imagine?
And now, Brian, the audacity, they don't want to screw Tully out of his money. They want to cut his body to shreds in a barbed wire match.
It is ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. Why does Tully have to go into a barbed wire match because a referee made a call? What has he done to deserve this? Nothing. They're attempting to assassinate him.
They are.
Just like Jim Cornette said.
But you know what?
Don't even tell me that I wouldn't have been a better horseman than Luger. I know I'd be a better talker. I could have went out there with JJ. We could have gone for an hour about this fucking check.
So he's still confident. So he's going to go fight this barbed wire match. And this time, they are going to make sure the $100,000 is in cash.
They sure shit better. I hope they learned a lesson. They did learn a lesson, as it was abundantly clear by this promo right here.
Nikita Koloff cut a promo, said somebody was going to get hurt in War Games, and he hoped it was him.
Yeah, he says, when I get hurt, I get meaner.
Get meaner.
Someone needs to talk to this guy.
He talked about Luger, wants to be a horseman, wants to live the lifestyle, and then as he put it, he wants to go to bar and party all over.
He's sickened by this partying.
No partying in Nikita Koloff's world. And then it was time.
He says if Luger thinks he's going to lay down and die and give him the title, never. They'd have to carry him out of the ring. That was a good promo.
It's a very good promo by Mr. Koloff. So we have been told
Yes.
that the best squash match of the decade was on the show. From a guy who'd had great squash matches before. So by his own standards, he had a lot to live up to here. Ron Garvin versus John Hardy.
Now, I don't know if this had anything to do with it, but Ron Garvin comes out and he's got red trunks and red boots, as he always does. And this fucking John Hardy comes out and he's got red trunks and red boots.
Not just that, they both had white waistbands.
Yeah.
Even the announcers are like, this guy must be a huge Ron Garvin fan.
Yeah. Now, if I didn't know any better, I would think that was the reason for the beating that Ron Garvin gave young John Hardy.
I suspect there are many reasons, including quite likely some that happened off camera before the match.
Could have been, yeah.
The gear didn't help. But honestly, I think the turning point was the very first thing Garvin does is a go behind and the amateur waist lock to take a guy down to the mat. This Hardy's a big dude. 4 or 5 inches taller than Garvin, 30 or 40 pounds heavier. He didn't go up one bit. And Garvin has to herk this guy into the air and slam him down. And as he lifts him, you'll hear guys, even at the gym, they're lifting weights and they'll grunt or they'll roar when they do a mighty lift. As Garvin throws this man into the air, you hear him shout, "Whoa, shit!" And he slams the guy down. So he's got him down, and he's abusing him for a while. He's doing like the arm bar with the forearm in the face and the elbow rubbing his face in the mat. And then he lets go, and Hardy just lies there with his arm sticking straight up in the air. And if he had any hope before that point, it was gone by then. Garvin decided to teach this man a wrestling lesson.
Oh, man, he taught him a lesson,
Oh,
all
my
right.
God.
He gave him the greatest stomp to the face I have ever seen in wrestling in my whole life. He chopped the absolute shit out of him. Mm-hmm. He put him in the wacky lucha submission I've ever seen in my life. He does the one where he puts a guy in his side and he steps like between his arms and his body and then grabs his leg and pulls on it. This time, he pulled the guy's leg and put it between his own legs.
Yeah.
And then he's trying to grab the other leg.
Yes.
He was unsuccessful, but he tried.
He tried. He's chopping the piss out of him. He's punching the piss out of him. He's stomping the piss out of him. Stops once in a while to stretch the piss out of him. This went through a break.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know how long this meeting was in real life, but it was like 8 minutes here on the replay.
It wasn't long enough.
Yeah.
And David Crockett says, and I quote, "You're witnessing," he said, "someone who is getting beaten up."
That's what he said.
Yep.
A few times.
And then Tony Schiavone goes, "Can you imagine if you were Ronnie Garvin's son and you're coming home and you've just wrecked Dad's car? Can you imagine?" David Crockett howled.
Yeah.
The idea of Ronnie Garvin beating the shit out of his own son had David Crockett in stitches.
So this went on and on. It was very violent. It was very brutal. And finally, Ronnie wins with a knockout punch, at which point David Crockett, the biggest fan of squash matches ever, says, "Thank you for ending the misery."
Oh, come on.
David Crockett thought Ronnie had gone too far.
Listen, anybody who disagrees that Ronnie Garvin should have been given the title,
Flair should have walked out, handed him the belt, and walked away.
I mean,
This is yours, sir.
I will give a beating the likes of which Garvin gave to John Hardy to anybody who denies Ron Garvin should have been the champion in 1987.
Well, there's more. Because afterwards, they go to interview Garvin at ringside. How many Garvin promos have we seen?
A lot.
Hundreds. How many of them were good?
Few.
One or two. This was so awesome.
It was unbelievable.
Garvin was pissed. He said, "I got a lot of respect for professional wrestling. I got a lot of respect for professional wrestlers. I came out here to wrestle a man. I wanted to earn my money. I didn't want to get paid for doing nothing." He was able to keep to channel his fury into something productive. He promoted the Great American Bash, promised if we bought tickets, we get to see men fighting every night. No one was going to take a night off. And the Garvins would be right in the middle of it. This is the best 10 minutes of TV on this show we've seen all year. This is unbelievably great.
You know, I realize that it's hard to look back, and I realize that Jinder Mahal is the world champion right now, but, like, I cannot understand. Like, I guess I can to a degree when you look at the NWA title lineage leading up to Ron Garvin winning, but this goddamn guy is so awesome. He's so awesome. And it's funny because when you watch him work, this guy would be a god on the 2017 indie scene. If he were like in New Japan or Ring of Honor or PWG, he'd be so over, just destroying these guys. He's like Minoru Suzuki, a 1987 American Minoru Suzuki that just goes in there and just slaughters people. He's so great.
I'm trying to think of he's like a mix of Zack Sabre and Chris Benoit because he does all these stretching holds and then also chops the piss out of people.
I don't
even know. There's no comparison to Ronnie Garvin these days.
I just know, as crazy as it sounds, like I don't see anything in Barry Windham, and I see so much in Ron Garvin. Am I wrong?
Not today.
Like on this show
Not
here?
on this show. So then Jimmy Garvin comes out. It's Jimmy Garvin versus Terry Jones. And we talked about Jimmy Garvin. We've seen Jimmy Garvin a lot too. And Jimmy Garvin was a great promo who was very adequate in the ring. And I'm thinking, he's got to follow his brother here. Good luck, dude. Well, he tried. He tried to wrestle like Ronnie. Slapping the piss out of this guy. Kicking him in the face repeatedly. He's wrestling in sequins. Precious has her perfume can in sequins. The fans are chanting for the Brainbuster for like 2 minutes straight. Finally, Garvin gave it to him and he won. And then he kissed his wife.
Well, the bad news is it was a shitty brainbuster, but the good news was it looked like he killed the guy, so...
Now, how does that make it shitty?
I don't know. The guy didn't go all the way up. He got like a foot off the ground and then just... It was more like a DDT.
I see.
But it looked like he killed him.
I'll buy that.
It looked like Bobby Roode's DDT is what it was.
All right, yeah, I can see that. We had the Horseman fanfare and Dylan and Lex cutting a promo. Dylan said 2 things would make Bash 87 better than Bash 86, the War Games and Lex Luger.
Well, he's half right.
Lex cut a promo. It wasn't It wasn't a terrible promo.
He's only half randomly shouting words.
Yeah.
Like, he mostly got his enunciation right, or his... what would the word be when you just randomly shout a word for, you know what I mean?
Emphasis.
Yeah. He had the emphasis right for half, and then the other half was completely random.
Yeah. I like it when he says, don't forget the symbol of excellence is this, and he holds up 5 fingers, and then very quickly puts down the thumb.
It's still better than most of the guys on Raw.
Yeah, that's true. He said he was very sick of being the only guy in the Horsemen without a title, promised to take Nikita's U.S. title, and he flexed a couple of times, and the women ogled him. How many times have we said only one guy in the Rock and Roll Express should cut only one guy in the Rock and Roll Express can cut promos? They shouldn't even bother sending Robert Gibson out there.
Well, they listened to you.
They did not send Robert Gibson out there. Ricky Morton came out and cut a promo. Said Jimmy Cornette had been running down their families. They were going to beat the Midnight Express and shove the U.S. tag belts down their throats because, of course, the Rock and Rolls are the World Tag Team Champions. So they're the only team that can look down at the championships the Midnights have. Kendall Windham versus Tim Hardy.
Only thing I got out of this match is I can confirm that Kendall Windham is much, much bigger than Zack Sabre Jr.
Fair enough. Now, that being said, he was still the skinniest wrestler of the 1980s.
Yep.
And partly I can see why, but he topped it off with the skinniest knee pads of all time, too. I believe he taped cotton balls to the front of his knees. Now, you don't want big giant knee pads, especially on this body. It was making him look even skinnier. But it was still weird looking. He won with the shittiest bulldog ever. Aired the War Games hype video for the 3rd time. Road Warriors got a promo.
This promo was awesome.
First of all, I don't know why, but they kept switching the camera, which has fucked up a lot of guys before, but these Warriors were always on point. They found the new camera immediately every time.
You know, I gotta say about this thing right here. So, the Road Warriors cut this great promo. Then they call in Nikita and Dusty. The fans are completely losing their shit. They're screaming about War Games. It was so awesome. And all I could think was, why couldn't this have closed the show? Like, these are your top baby faces. Like, the Horsemen are supposed to be your top heels, but everybody loves them. They're basically baby faces. By continuing to close the show with the Horsemen, I mean, you're just hammering home that they're the biggest stars. And isn't the whole idea, like, to make your baby faces these gigantic stars, and they're going to foil the heels there in the end?
I think it was the ideal plan, yeah.
This should have ended the show, and the Horsemen could have been here doing their thing.
That would have been better. So the Road Warriors ran down the Horsemen for being soft, talked about how violent and vicious War Games would be. Hawks threatened to slam him into the cage, and then down to the mat, and then into the cage, and down to the mat. And they call in Dusty and Nikita. And when these 4 guys are all out there at the same time, they're just standing there. They're not doing anything. But it's a collection of babyface star power, the likes of which nobody had ever seen, at least in these fans. They're just going ballistic. And you can't believe how cool it is. They're going to get to see all 4 of these guys fight at the other time. The only problem, this match is the War Games match. On one side, of course, is the 4 Horsemen. On the other side is the Road Warriors and Dusty Rhodes and Nikita. Apparently that's too much. Apparently the Road Warriors and Superpowers is too much. And so they have dubbed this foursome the Other Team. That leaves room for improvement. Lex Luger versus Dexter Westcott.
This was bizarre. So the fans start yelling, JJ's a thief at JJ Dillon because he allegedly stole the money. But they're also yelling, break it at Lex Luger
I see.
as he twisted Dexter's arm. And then when Luger applied a bear hug, they went crazy.
Well, the reason was, in addition to those 2 things, they have been demanding a bear hug for like 3 minutes. Just bear hug, bear hug, bear hug. And then Lex gave it to him. He gave him the bear hug. They went crazy. And then they wanted a backbreaker. Goddamn fans are never happy.
No, these were some 2017 smart fans trying to run the show here in '87.
They actually were. This was they hijacked the show.
Yeah, this was Full Sail.
Yes. So Lex gave him the backbreaker, and it was enough for the win. Horseman fanfare, then a Ric Flair promo. Said he was the best. He could be a Road Warrior if he wanted to shave his head and put a Halloween costume on. Said none of those guys got a world championship like I do. None of those guys got a TV championship like Tully Blanchard does. And he admits, he says, I'll be the first to tell you, I'm out here for fame and glory. His exact words were, I am a glory-happy mother. So he's going into that cage seeking nothing but victory. 26 bashes in 26 cities. Lists all the great wrestlers are going to be there.
He had the best burial of Ricky Morton when he goes, "You may be a big thing to the teeny boppers with their training bras, but you're nothing to the world champion."
Yes.
And then, irony of ironies, who does he call out of the crowd but Blanche from the Golden Girls?
Was that actually her?
No, but it looked exactly
I
like
thought the
her.
same thing.
Yeah.
This was, I don't know what they called the Cougars in the 1980s, but this was a Cougar. She had her very, very snappy white outfit on with the cleavage hanging out. And Flair had her confirm he was all man. She confirmed this. He dismissed her. He promised the Horsemen did not chase girls. Girls chased them. Somewhere in here, by the way, he called out Larry Bird again. I'm sure to emphasize he was going to make more money in July than Bird made all year. Possible.
I'm skeptical, actually.
Regardless, this was a great promo. Italian Stallion versus Tommy Angel.
So weird. I just presumed this was the main event. And then it kept going. I thought, well, Flair came out and talked. Like, what else is there? So clearly this is like the match to fill up time before the show ends. And there's like another 2 matches afterwards.
Between the fact this was a longer show than we watched and all the buffering issues and trying to restart and stuff, we ended up...
did feel like it was forever.
We were really far into this match. We were really far into our watching session compared to where we were in the show. So I don't know why this match happened. 2 pointless...
Fill time. They had 2 hours.
2 geeks out there in white trunks, both of them. White knee pads, both of them. White boots, both of them. Stallion won in 3 minutes with a power slam. Great. Midnight Express versus Mike Force and Larry Stevens.
Cornette literally did not stop talking the entire match on commentary. And my favorite part is he's talking about Stan Lane. And first he mentions that he is an expert in jiu-jitsu.
I was in there.
And then, after talking about all of these different arts, including jiu-jitsu, he adds, and also Savat.
Yes.
That was the main event martial art. Savat.
Absolutely. French foot fighting, he explained.
Yes. Well, he's not wrong.
They do some stuff with Mike Force for a while. Then Larry Stevens hits the ring a house of fire. And he balls up his fists. And Bobby Eaton backs off and says, whoa, 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 whoa. There's no punching here. This is a wrestling match. This isn't boxing.
By the way, I forgot to mention, Lasertron threw a closed fist punch in his match. Can you believe it? That's an illegal move. He's the hero of the children.
Well, this is what happens when you team with Jimmy Valiant.
I was going to say, Valiant's rubbing off on this guy. That wasn't right.
The rules do not apply to some of us. So Bobby Eaton says, whoa, whoa, no close fists in this wrestling match. And 2 or 3 times they go to lock up. And Bobby Eaton backs off again and says, hey, he's balled up his fist. Referee, make him stop. So then, of course, they lock up. And Eaton takes him to the ropes. And then goes in for a clean break. And Bobby punches him right in the jaw. And it sounds so simple. And it sounds so obvious. But if you watched Bobby Eaton pull this off, this man was awesome. This man was so unbelievably great at this kind of thing. They beat these guys up for a while. They won with the Gravedigger, which was...
So funny, they hit this Grave Digger, which is a power slam off the middle rope. And Cornette's, like I said, he never stopped talking for a moment during this match. And they hit the Grave Digger, and he's so happy to explain to us that this is their new move.
That's right.
And I'm just like, Bobby Eaton does like 9,000 moves off the top rope. They do all these crazy spots. Now they've got a new move, which is off the middle rope. I mean, it was like everything that Cornette complains about with the Young Bucks.
You don't say.
It's a bunch of high-flying stuff off the ropes and a bunch of new wacky moves. And guess what? Both teams are awesome.
There you go.
I got to talk to him about this someday.
So they win with a Gravedigger, and then they go to join Cornette for a promo. And the Midnights, whether it was Condrey or now with Lane, they do the same thing where they just lean on the podium. They're just hanging out. Their job's done. They've clocked out. Looking at the audience, looking for hot girls. Just killing time. Cornette's running his mouth 1,000,000 miles an hour. And about 2 minutes in, after he talked the whole match, the director or somebody goes to wrap him up, as suddenly all 3 guys are outraged. How dare you try to give Jim Cornette the wrap-up signal? They're going to go as long as they want. Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson versus Daryl Dalton and Rick Sullivan.
I don't remember much about this match, except Rick Sullivan is the guy that looks like a young Bryan Danielson. And Daryl Dalton is just... he's like the Beer City Bruiser if he added 100 pounds. just an enormous fat guy in, of course, baby blue
trunks.
tights.
Actually, the Beer City Bruisers are very good
Trunks, yes.
comparison.
Not tights.
The
They're
trunks,
short.
Excuse me, the trunks. But the real key is, it's not whether they cover the legs or not. He had them pulled like all the way up to his navel.
Oh,
So like up, like a reverse muffin top. So the seam of his trunks
it's
cut
not
off.
even that, dude. Like, some people can pull their tights up too high because they got love handles and they feel if they cover, like if they pull them up a little high, they'll cover them up and their waist looks smaller.
Mm-hmm.
This guy is so round, it's like if you tried to pull the pants up on an egg.
Basically, it just emphasizes his gut even more.
Oh,
So
I was sickened.
they did what they had to do with him. As soon as he tagged out, they never let him back in.
No, they did not.
And they beat Sullivan with a spine buster and slingshot suplex.
It's funny back then. Like, Rick Sullivan he had a good physique and he's pretty good, and like because he was good, they beat him up the whole match.
Yeah.
And beat him.
Yes,
It's like it's a blessing and a curse.
it really is.
They're like, we do not want this Daryl Dalton in the ring. So, like, you're talented, but we're killing you, and they did.
They did. Although not Ron Garvin style.
No, not like that. They respectfully killed him.
Yes, that's the best way to put it. So we had the Horseman promo to end the show. And
With trumpet.
with a fanfare. They congratulated Blanchard and Anderson on their win. Actually, JJ congratulates Tully on getting the pinfall, but says it was all set up by the enforcer, Arn Anderson. And Arn gets to speak his mind and close the show. He says every time he ran into people at the gym or on the road or at the 7-Eleven, he always had a blank stare in his eyes.
7-Eleven. What's Arn doing at the 7-Eleven? You're killing their gimmick.
Coffee. Coffee on the road. I don't know. And beer. Cheap
I
beer.
guess it's open 24/7. They're on the road a lot.
Yeah. But he says all the fans said, boy, Arn, you got an intense stare in your face. And of course he has an intense stare. The Bashes are here. When you're facing competition like the Horsemen are facing, the Road Warriors, Dusty Rose, Nikita Koloff, the Rock and Roll Express, the Garvins, if you're not intense 24/7, you're going to go down. And I will not let myself down. I will not let these men down. I don't have a belt of my own, but we all defend the world title collectively. We all defend this TV title collectively. When Lex wins that U.S. title, we're going to defend it collectively. And they all had a four-way handshake, and they're all very happy, and that was that.
All of these goddamn heel factions and babyface factions in WWE, it's mostly the babyfaces that hate each other all the time. It's like, here are 4 heels, well, 5 heels.
6 if you count our journey.
They're best friends.
Absolutely.
They are absolutely the best friends. They'll do anything for each other. I mean, they'd screw each other, but the opportunity isn't there. So they're all good buddies. They're friends. They travel together. They share everything, including their women. They're the biggest baby faces in wrestling right now.
They were so awesome. You know, I've been thinking about this for a while. We watched the original Horsemen with Ole. Now we're watching them with Lex. And obviously, Lex has a better body. And obviously, Ole is better in every other measurable way. Better promo, better worker, better offense, better selling. But you know what? Lex is a better Horseman.
Sure, he's not ruining the group.
Absolutely not.
I mean, maybe that was the mindset back then if you were watching it, but watching it today, I mean, he's doing fine.
Lex is the guy who would go wrestle, then go train, and then go party. Ole was always just a grumpy guy in cheap gear.
He
didn't belong with this group.
crabby guy.
He was fantastic, but he wasn't the best Horseman.
That's correct.
Yeah.
He was great in every way, but the gimmick was different with him.
Yeah, it was a different kind of great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He started a crew that was like a gruff crew of roughnecks. Now they all got a lot of money and they're rich. And so he was a bad fit.
Yes.
And so they threw in Luger. It's a great storyline.
Yeah.
It all makes sense.
So let's get funky like a monkey.
Okay. At long last, after a month away, it seems, a return to retro NWA.
And it was like we'd never left.
It was still well.
There was good stuff. There was bad stuff.
The good stuff on this show was amazing, and the bad stuff was also amazing. The highs and lows on this show,
Sounds like everyone.
dizzying. No, the good stuff here was better than this. May have been the best good stuff we've seen all year on this show, and also the worst bad stuff.
No, we had the Horseman breakup with Ole. I'm
That was
pretty
great.
sure that was better than anything on this show.
Well,
But this is leading to something
that's true.
that may be better than Ole breaking up with the Horseman.
Well, let's begin. Once again, they showed the promo where Barry Switzer welcomes us to the Great American Bash. Still don't know why they did this.
because they got Barry Switzer.
I guess just because
they were like, hey, can you do something for us?
Yeah. They announced the bash would officially begin the following Wednesday and go throughout the month of July. On this show here tonight, we're going to get the dream team of Ric Flair and Lex Luger against the Garvins. Flair came out to cut a promo, and Ric Flair was getting the John Cena reaction. He was drowned out by cheers. He was drowned out by boos. I had great difficulty hearing what he was saying. He was ranting about the War Games. I think in the end, he just said he was going to make more money in July than most laborers would make in 25 years.
25 years?
That's what he said.
I'm skeptical.
He promised Space Mountain will be open all night. Mod Squad versus El Negro.
I wrote Al Negro. That was clearly a typo.
Oh, I don't know. And Alan Martin. El Negro was, in fact, a large black fella in a lucha mask. Not even a lucha mask, just a destroyer mask.
When I saw the guy, I was like, okay, so this is obviously what's going on. He's terrible, but he's gigantic.
Uh-huh.
And so they're going to put the guy in a mask, and when he gets better, they'll take the mask off and do something with the guy.
Yeah.
I'm skeptical if he ever got better, because I have no idea who Al Negro was.
I don't know. Mod Squad beat both these guys up forever in a very boring manner. And then won with a top rope elbow. Show was not off to a hot start.
Tony claimed that he was more impressed by the Mod Squad every week. What? Don't lie to me.
Tony had some zingers on the show. There's worse coming up. J.J. Dillon came out to hype up the War Games. He neatly and succinctly summed up the entire thing.
I use that same word, succinctly.
Yes. 2 rings, a cage, a roof. Guy's going to take turns coming in. And once everyone's in, it's submission or surrender. And he promised the Horseman would win.
It's quite simple, really.
Hardly any more detail than that.
No, and you didn't need any more.
No.
He made it sound easy and fun and deadly.
That's. I don't think anyone's ever used those 3 words in combo before.
Well, now they have.
Easy, fun, and deadly. The War Games.
Yep.
Arn Anderson versus Dexter Westcott.
You know we haven't seen on the show in a while is Brad Armstrong.
We have not.
But Arn Anderson decided that he was going to Brad Armstrong this guy. The difference is, he's a heel. So it was okay to boo him when he did it. He did 5,000 arm bars.
Yeah. And 0 anything else.
Armbar, until the end.
Until the end, Dexter hit a few punches, then Arn grabbed him and hit the greatest gourd buster of all the times.
He sure did.
He lifted him up, and then he planted this man's face deep into the earth.
Yeah, he didn't bust his gourd. He busted his head.
Yes.
It just drove him. It was almost like a DDT.
He busted the mat. The head was fine. The inside of the head may not have been so great. Usually he lifts him up and thus lets gravity do the work. He lifted Dexter Westcott up and planted his face down.
Yeah, he was afraid that maybe he was on the moon, so he needed to assist gravity.
I guess. We have the same War Games hype video. I will never, ever get tired of this. They can play it 20 times in a row as far as I'm concerned. Ric Flair and Lex Luger versus the Garvins.
Yes.
Just how many Ric Flair matches have we seen? Thousands.
Yep.
Hundreds for sure, maybe thousands. How many times have we seen Ric Flair get chopped? Thousands, maybe millions. I've never seen Ric Flair chopped bloody before.
I'm sure it's happened.
I'm sure it has. I'm sure every part of his body's bled at some point.
Excuse me?
Well, he's bled a lot. Gig mark, forehead, yeah. Point being, they chopped the piss out of each other.
You know, first off, Rick and Lex didn't get an entrance.
No?
They were already in the ring after commercial. And then the Garvins got a babyface entrance, or a musical entrance. There was not one thing in this match that made me not want to see Ron Garvin beat Ric Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight title. They beat the piss out of each other.
I'm convinced they were trying to chop through each other. They're just taking turns as hard as they possibly can, putting all their weight into it, and firing back and no-selling everything. It was amazing. And at one point, Flair, perhaps forgetting which Garvin brother was which, he takes Jimmy to the corner and throws one massive chop of death, and Jimmy says, "Oh no." And Jimmy switches things immediately and chops the piss out of him. Lex was not involved in any of this, but he was still working his ass off. All 4 guys were just sweating bullets very quickly. There were a couple of times Lex looked lost. He tried to leapfrog, and his timing was off, and came down, almost blew out his knee. And there was once when he wasn't sure when Ronnie came in off a tag what he was going to do, but otherwise it was just an outstanding tag match. These guys busted their ass for 20 minutes.
You know, this Ron Garvin was not a great promo, as we're all well aware. But as I was watching him just destroy Ric Flair and just absolutely massacring each other, it was so awesome. I was trying to think, who would I have rather seen beat Ric Flair for the title here at the end of 1987? Like, it wasn't going to be Arn or Tully, because they were already horsemen. I mean, Barry Windham, like, everyone salivates over Barry Windham on this show. I don't see it. I kind of did on this night, but that was because he just slaughtered a shitty jobber. But Magnum was out.
Yeah.
Nikita probably would have been great. Dusty, been there, done that. Mm-hmm. I mean, what the hell was wrong with Ron Garvin? I mean, it's the fans, I'm sure, that really got upset about it because Flair was so awesome. I mean, Flair was more awesome than Garvin. Mm-hmm. But, like, Garvin was great. I'm still waiting for... It's like when we watched Nitro, and for a long time it was like, what are the cruiserweights bitching about? They're showcased on the show, they have great matches, the crowds go crazy for them. And then, like, over the last month, all of a sudden you realize why they hated it so much, because now it's absolute shit on the show. I watched this old NWA and I'm like, okay, so when is Ron Garvin going to jump the shark? Because it must happen, right? Because everyone's so mad that he wins the title. Mm-hmm. It ain't happened yet.
No, he was great here, and like I say, all four guys, the intensity of this was just off the charts throughout, and finally it breaks down into a four-way. Flair begins to stalk Precious on the floor. Dylan tries to kidnap her. He throws the woman over her shoulder and goes for the exit, but Dusty and Nikita are there to block his path, and they escort her to safety. So the Horsemen take out the ref, but the fight continues. Somewhere in here, Jimmy hits Flair with a brainbuster, he makes a cover, and Ronnie counts the pin. The bell rings and the fans all cheer, but of course the ref is called for the DQ, and that was that. A great, great, great tag team brawl. They go to break. They come back, and Jimmy's there to cut a promo. And it's an awesome promo. He says he's a wrestler. He knows what he's in for. He expects all kinds of pain and punishment. But trying to take his woman, trying to take his squeeze, that's a disgusting thought. He demanded, I say, a one-on-one cage match with Ric Flair somewhere on the Bash Tour. Says he's not going to stand by and let anyone abuse his woman. It makes his stomach crawl thinking what they could get away with.
Yeah, J.J. Dillon tried to kidnap her.
Yeah.
Like, what would have happened if Dusty hadn't been there? Where were they going to take her?
I don't know.
What were they going to do with her?
We may never know. I want a cage, he says. And the reason I want a cage is to keep the four horsemen out. Let me repeat that. I want a cage, and the reason I want a cage is to keep the four horsemen out. For all of you who never knew what the point of a cage match was here in 2017. It was a great promo.
God, the end of that match, Luger took such a great bump for the KO punch, sold it like a boss, and then Flair just getting dumped right on his head, which was a storyline later. That's what Luger was so mad about later. Mm-hmm. How dare you drop the world champion on his head?
Yeah.
The temerity. That's not allowed.
No. And then the parade of amazing jobbers began. Ricky Morton versus Freddie Smith. Freddie Smith looked exactly like what you would think a guy named Freddie Smith would look like. He had his teal tights pulled up over his back fat. Morton's doing some stuff, and he goes up top, and he jumps, and he just hits a move. For the life of me, I couldn't tell you what he was doing or what he was trying to do. I'm just assuming Freddie Smith was out of position, and Ricky had improvised in midair, and he immediately hit a dropkick and won.
Yeah. These guys, some of them have more tolerance for the jobbers than others.
As we were learning.
I couldn't believe how long Barry went. It was amazing. He probably was marking out for David Crockett and just wanted to keep it going.
That may have been it. Dylan and Luger came out for a promo. Dylan said Jimmy Garvin had the gall to demand a match with Ric Flair, and Flair wanted to make it happen just to punish Jimmy for calling him out. And then Lex Luger cuts the best pissed-off babyface promo I ever saw. They dropped Flair on his head. He's outraged about that. He says, we're the Horsemen. We made our name by wrestling matches. Now what happens after the match? Says, coming for the Garvins, coming for the Road Warriors, coming for Dusty and Nikita, all at the Summer Bash.
It's fucking Summer Bash.
Every single time.
Can he just write on his hand? Can he just write Gab on his hand?
Guess not. Dusty came out for a promo.
Luger was screaming like a wild man. I got about 50% of what he said.
He was out of control. Dusty came out for a promo. He called the War Games the War Boxes.
Yeah, the War Boxes.
Mm-hmm.
This was a hell of a promo, but it's the usual Dusty promo where, kind of like Luger, I understood 50% of it. At one point, he starts talking about Dark Journey.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time this show began to get uncomfortable. He called her or he didn't call her. He said she was brown sugar.
Mm-hmm.
But he said if he wanted brown sugar, he'd go to downtown Atlanta and get the good stuff. If you know what I mean.
That is what he said. Like word for word, that's what he said.
So he's going to go get what?
Black hookers.
That's what I thought he was talking about.
Unless there is a drug reference in 1987 I'm not familiar with.
This guy's a babyface.
Uh-huh.
He's supposed to be the top babyface.
Yeah. He's the American dream.
Is that the American dream?
It was then.
Is that an aspect of it?
Let's see.
Then he says he's going to get his $100,000 back. And the night he gets it, he's going to have a limo there. And if she wants a real man, Texas-sized, he adds, talking about his cock, top babyface, he might just make some time for that brown sugar. Can you imagine?
Isn't Tully from Texas, too? I guess being from Texas doesn't guarantee you are Texas-sized.
What are you saying about Tully?
What's Dusty saying about Tully?
Well, not necessarily. I mean,
He implied that something Texas-sized would be something new. I like when he said that he was spending time at his cottage in Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
From Canada.
Tully Blanchard?
Yep.
He's from San Antonio.
Alberta, Canada. That's where he was born.
I see.
Canadian-born American retired pro wrestler.
Anyway.
No, that's apparently very important. Lance is going to come after you now. Although we should know from Lance's career that, in fact, apparently it's bigger in Canada than in Texas.
All I know is Dusty was at his cottage in Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Ignore me. This is important details.
We're
talking about the sport of kings here.
The arenas and stadiums they'd be touring in, fighting Tully Blanchard for $100,000 in a stadium in Charlotte. This led to Nikita Koloff versus Brody Chase.
Tully Arthur Blanchard. I didn't picture him as an Arthur.
Art?
Yeah. Tully Art Blanchard.
Tully is his first name?
Yes.
I thought it was short for something.
No, Tully Arthur Blanchard.
Has there ever been another human being named Tully?
Name Tully. Let's see what it says. Tully is a surname of Irish and Scottish origin.
Oh, how about that?
Spelling variations include Tally, Tilly, MacTully, MacTilly, Macatilla,
Macatilla,
O'Multilly, O'Multully, Maccuntully, and Flood. Flood?
Are you reading Wikipedia?
Yeah. No, this is Wikipedia.
Somebody messed with that one, I think.
No. Mac and Tuil is a corruption of Mac Maoltuil and has been anglicized as Flood due to Tuil in Irish meaning flood.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, so it wasn't a screw up. So there you go. It doesn't seem to be short for anything.
No. How about that? Nikita Koloff versus Brody Chase. Nikita gave him some offense and then just threw him down and won with a sickle.
It's Gaelic. It means peaceful.
Really?
Yeah.
Peaceful Blanchard.
Peaceful Art Blanchard.
Peaceful Art Blanchard.
That's actually a hell of a name for a worker. If you want to bring back the baby faces, somebody in NXT needs to be Peaceful Art Blanchard.
Oh, God.
Where are we here? Brody Chase?
Yeah.
Can we talk about how it was a total squash, except the opening, where Nikita went for an elbow and Chase moved, and he missed.
That happened.
What?
Yeah. And Nikita stands up and looks at him like, you deliberately dodged. Anyway, Nikita won. And then Nikita and Dusty got a promo. Seeing the Horseman.
I thought it was going to be a competitive match after he moved.
The Horsemen like to party together. He and Dusty and the Road Warriors all like to hurt people together. He specifically warned Lex he was in trouble. And Dusty promised pain, blues, and agony for the Horsemen. Barry Windham versus Gary Phelps.
Oh, my God. This was even better than your usual disaster of a squash match because Barry knew it was a disaster. Gary knew it was a disaster. And more importantly, David Crockett and Tony Schiavone knew it was a disaster, and they buried this guy.
Gary Phelps comes out there. Like many jobbers, he has a poor physique. He's quite jiggly. So he says, you know what? I can't go out there on national television in just trunks. I need a singlet. So he gets a wrestling singlet. Only it's not the kind that covers up most of the torso. It's the kind that is like trunks with two very skinny straps coming up over the shoulders. So rather than cover his man boobs, it just emphasized them. It was like he was going for cleavage. So he's out there jiggling and bouncing all over the place. David Crockett referred to him as a wet noodle.
This guy's a wet noodle, he says.
Yeah.
The man's Barry make this guy suffer.
Barry hits an atomic drop, which Phelps sells by pitching forward onto his face. And Crockett screams, he killed him that time.
Tony laughs.
Yeah.
It was after the atomic drop. Like, I don't know if Barry was expecting him to bump a certain way, or maybe he sat on his leg really hard and hurt it. But after the atomic drop, Barry just started to beat the shit out of this guy. Mm-hmm. He chopped him as hard as he could. He lifted him up. He chopped him again. This was one of those matches that sucks because one guy knocks the other guy down, and then he lifts him up. And then he knocks him down, and then he lifts him up. Over and over. And the guy doesn't get up on his own. It's like, if this were real, why do you keep lifting him back up again? Why don't you just pin him? I know why. He wanted to make the guy suffer, legit. Mm-hmm. David called him a sack of taters.
A sack of taters. Which the more I think about it, the more accurate it is. There were plenty of taters in this match. Barry wins the lariat, which he appeared to legit try to take the man's head off.
I think he tried to kill him.
He hits this lariat.
Pretty sure.
The announcers just belly laugh. The funniest thing they ever saw. So Barry wins. Then he cuts a promo, calling out the Horsemen, saying they're going to be riding low in the saddle. This was not a good promo.
No. And it wasn't a good match, except I loved it.
It was a great bad match.
Yeah. This was the first time I saw something in Barry. But all it was killing geek jobbers.
Great. Oh, that's different than what Ronnie does?
Well, yeah, but this was different. Like, Ronnie does it in every match.
That's true.
Barry had to be prodded by Gary Phelps.
Peaceful Art Blanchard versus Hal Moore.
This fucking Hal Moore. Before we even talk about him.
I could talk about 3 hours from this match.
Oh, I could too. I look up on the screen, and it says Tully Blanchard versus Hal Moore. I hadn't even seen Hal Moore yet. I just saw the words Tully Blanchard versus Hal Moore, NWA World Television Title Match. And I thought, okay, hold on a second. This is a championship match. Hal Moore is getting a shot at the championship. Who the fuck is Hal Moore? Why is he getting a championship match? Then I saw him. This guy. Every week we think we've seen the worst. This had to set new standards. Am I wrong?
Oh, no. I will say, unlike Gary Phelps, Hal Moore got a singlet that covered his entire torso. Good for you. That's all I've got positive to say about him. I should add, by the way, this guy's so fat. He's so disgusting. He's so horrible. He's in a match with Tully Blanchard, somehow for the title. It's never explained why he got a championship match. But you know what? They go as far as to say, normally, Tully puts $10,000 on the line in TV title matches. But J.J. Dillon has refused to put the money on the line for this match. I'm like, what? Why is this part of the story? What is going on here? He looked at Hal Moore and thought, I can't put the money on the line for this guy. That's too big a risk. Why was that part of the story? Hal Moore began this match with what I promise you was the worst lockup in all of 1987, and perhaps in the 3 decades since.
And that's saying something, because when I saw El Negro lock up earlier, I was like, that's the worst lockup I've ever seen.
It was so bad that Tully didn't grab a headlock or an arm wringer or anything. He just slapped him across the face. How dare you get in the ring with me and bring that lockup? David Crockett, babyface announcer, chortled with joy. So Tully's got Hal Moore down on the ground. And as we mentioned, Hal Moore was big and fat. He somehow still had trunks that were way too big for him. So Tully takes him down, and I'm not quite sure what was going on. I think he was going for like a wedgie, but instead of grabbing the top of the trunks, he grabbed the bottom of the trunks and pulled them up as high as they could go. But as soon as he started it, thank the Lord above, the director cut to a shot of Dark Journey instead. That was a plus. So the match continues. It's just going on for a while. And Tully's got him like in a face lock, front face lock. And Hal Moore hits the softest, slowest, gentlest punches to the ribs you ever saw. Just pat, pat, right in the ribs. And Tully lets him go. He looks down at his ribs in confusion. He looks at Hal Moore in confusion for a long time. He just stands there staring at this man, wondering what's going on. He holds his hands behind his head, inviting more of these thunderous shots to the body. Hal Moore ain't got clue one what to do. And
No, he's baffled.
Just stares back at him. So Tully says, okay, I'll put my hands behind my back and give you a shot to the head instead. Hal Moore still don't know what to do. Finally, he throws a clubber and forearm or two. Tully completely dodges him. Hal Moore legitimately was throwing clubbing forearms and missing and stumbling. They were so bad.
Tully was playing Arn Anderson with this guy. Or, I'm sorry, Anderson Silva.
Yes.
He was playing Anderson Silva.
And Hal Moore was playing all those guys Anderson Silva killed.
He was not Chris Weidman.
No.
He never landed that one shot.
No, he did not. This went on for a while, and finally Tully finished him off with a slingshot suplex. This might have been my new favorite squash match ever.
It was up there.
It's on the short list.
Yeah.
Let's review.
It was just hideous.
Kurt Angle and Roderick Strong.
Yep.
Ronnie Garvin and that one Hardy a few weeks ago.
Yep.
This
Yeah.
there's one other we always talk about.
Well, there was a Benoit David Flair match.
Benoit David
It was
Flair,
awesome.
yes.
And there was an Ultimo Dragon versus one of his Tokyo Magnum, I think.
Okay, yeah.
Which is coming up soon on Nitro.
We can only hope. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was glorious. Absolutely glorious. Arn does a promo. The Horseman soon came out to stand by his side, but he did all the talking. Just says, this Great American Bash, the schedule is too tough. The competition is too high. No one is going to get through this thing undefeated. There's going to be winners. There's going to be losers. Titles are going to change hands. But the bottom line, it's the biggest stage possible for the Horsemen to show what we do best and to make a lot of money. And he plugged War Games some more. He promised that any combination of Horsemen would be the best tag team in the world, and that was that. This was great. Cornette came out for a promo. He says Ricky Morton had been out there having a tough time with a nobody, which is true. So when the Midnights wrestled nobodies, they didn't have a tough time. They embarrassed them, they humiliated them, made their families ashamed to be associated with them. And if the Rock and Rolls wanted to shut his mouth, all they had to do was face the Midnights with the world titles on the line.
He used himself as bait.
Basically, yeah. So we have the Midnight Express versus Paul Damon and Terry Jones. You mentioned earlier, Dusty had some comments that made us uncomfortable.
My God, Cornette had the most racist tirade about Asians
openly
I have ever heard on a wrestling show.
Blatant racial slurs dropped left and right about the people the Road Warriors were beating in Japan.
Now, second only to that in terms of being appalled was one of these jobbers had boobs so big I was afraid he was pregnant or lactating.
Paul
Should
Damon.
not have been in the ring.
Eventually proven to be Paul Damon. It was a very jiggly episode of WCW.
Oh, my Lord in heaven.
He was trying hard, but he was clueless. Stan would hit a kick to the gut, and Paul Damon would sound like he'd been punched in the head.
Why not?
They drag him out to make fun of him at the podium, which they do every match. And Cornette takes the mic and says, say hi to your mom and say the Rock and Rolls are going to lose, or whatever he says. And Eaton goes to throw him back in the ring, and Eaton's, at this point, has mercy on the man. He gently rolls him back in the ring and pats him in the ass. Match continues. Eventually, the Midnights won with a top rope leg drop and a flapjack.
It's amazing how Jim Cornette can just go nonstop throughout an entire match, talking without taking a single breath, to the point where eventually they just go to commercial. And he's still talking.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is astonishing. There's only one Jim Cornette.
It's like Dave on a Yada. You just talk all the way through a break. Except on this show, they actually cut him off.
Yes. Ricky Morton came out for a promo. His best line was when he asked Cornette, "Did your mama have any kids that lived?"
Dude. Where's Robert, by the way?
He
was nowhere on this show.
I am not complaining.
I mean, I'm not either, but it was just kind of weird.
Yeah. He promised the Rock and Rolls with the Real Express and also the Real World Tag Team Champions.
And then...
Now, what sick fool, what cruel hoax is this played on you and I here?
Forget the hoax aspect of it. The match was, I swear to God, it's Daryl Dalton versus Thunderfoot number 2.
Versus.
Yeah.
Not as a team against the Road Warriors or something. No.
My first question was, who's the star? I mean, seriously, who's the star? Don't tell the people.
Well, let me tell you something.
If you're listening right now and you hear that the match is Daryl Dalton versus Thunderfoot number 2, who's the star in this match?
Well, the first thing they did here in this starless night, this starless encounter, was to hit the mat and do an armbar and lie there. So the answer is nobody.
Yeah.
Now,
eventually we discovered that the star was Thunderfoot number 2.
There was one fan, and we could hear one fan because he was the only one making any noise. We know he's the geek, and you're going to win, Thunderfoot.
Oh, wow.
Direct quote.
Wow.
So
the usage of geek in 1985.
Dalton was fat with a rat tail, a horrible pro wrestler. Career advice, everyone. When you get 0 offense against Thunderfoot number 2,
Dude.
time to change careers.
Oh, my God.
So, this fucking Thunderfoot.
Thunderfoot number 1 was actually a guy, but Thunderfoot number 2 was a character that they just put different guys under the mask. Why did he need to have a match here and win?
A great question.
What is going on?
Why did it take 20 minutes?
That's an even better question.
You beat him, make a cover, pick him up.
Well, I mean, theoretically, they're both jobbers, so it should take a long time for one guy to beat the other, I guess.
I like when when Eddie Guerrero and 1,000 other guys, they'd have the guy down face up, and they'd rake his eyes with their boot. Dalton was face down, and Thunderfoot raked the back of his head, where there's no eyeballs. Eventually, Dalton hit like 3 terrible punches, and Foot finally pinned him with a neck breaker. At which point, Tony Schiavone claimed an impressive win.
Yeah. He's wrong.
He's lying.
Was an unimpressive win.
He's a lying liar who lies. The Mod Squad cut a promo.
You know what's funny about this? So the Mod Squad, like, they were jobbers, but now they're supposed to be somebody. But they're still the Mod Squad.
Yes, this is the flaw in the plan.
And the funniest thing is, they're out there cutting a promo, and I thought I was watching the Revival. They got the same voices. Like, the one Mod Squad guy's got the same facial hair as Scott Dawson, and the other guy kind of looks like the other guy, Dash Wilder. I mean, it was weird. It's like the Revival all over again, except the Revival are 1,000 times better.
Yeah, that's a minor detail. Promo was fine. They called out all the other tag teams, especially the Rock and Roll Express. They promised to win the World Tag Team titles. J.J. Dillon and Jim Crockett come out.
Oh, man, here we go.
So Dillon says, okay, let's make this clear. Jimmy Garvin has come out before the world. He's come to you, Jim Crockett. He demands Ric Flair give me a world title shot. He demands it be inside a steel cage. And he wants it in Greensboro. Because in Greensboro, it was the last time Ric Flair lost the world championship to Dusty Rhodes. Crockett mentioned this, and Dillon says, that's academic, we're beyond that now. Dillon says, okay, we have our own stipulations we've added. First of all...
He's doing a contract negotiation live on air.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, the fur coat that we gave Precious as a gift last year, we want it back.
I love this.
If we win, we get our fur coat back.
Ric Flair is like the richest guy, supposedly. He's going to make more in July than some workers make in 25 years. He bought a goddamn fur coat for the woman, but because she spurned him, he's got to get it back.
Yes.
It's been a year.
Yes.
He will not rest until he gets his coat back.
No. More importantly, also on the line, should Ric Flair defeat Jimmy Garvin and retain the world title, not only will he get his fur coat back, but Precious, for one night, will be on a dream date with the Nature Boy.
Oh, man. Wrestling sucks nowadays.
So Flair, Dylan explains all this in great detail. What is at stake for Garvin? What is at stake for Flair? Crockett says, Jimmy Garvin has agreed to these stipulations because he's that confident he's going to win. And Dylan is very, very happy to hear all this. And that is that. And then just to remind us all, to keep us more excited for the Garvin-Flair match, they showed virtually the entire tag match from earlier.
Yep. What a great angle. It's so awesome.
It is. It's so simple. And so easy. And then Tully and Dark Journey came out for a promo to close the show. Tully vows to beat Dusty Rhodes in the barbed wire ladder match in Greensboro. Yes, ladder match. In 1987, he explicitly said he was going to climb the ladder and grab a bag of money. That is how you win. Then it was time for Dark Journey to talk. After all these weeks of being out here, she had one chance to speak, and she fumbled her first line.
She was not a great promo.
She said that she was too sweet for Dusty, and only Tully was going to get a taste of her.
He was over the moon.
Oh, yeah.
When she said this. And she says he'll show Dusty some sugar in Atlanta.
That's right.
The show is so much fun. I love this show every week.
You do.
You know, that's one of the things, they always talk about, why can't we have squash matches again on Raw? And, every now and then you'll have Braun Strowman come out and kill some geek, or Nia Jax for a while was coming out and killing girls. It's just not the same if they're trained.
No.
You know what I mean?
The jobbers need to be more amateurish.
Like James Ellsworth got over huge because he had a very unique look, but he'd been wrestling forever. I mean, we need some jobbers that have been in the business for a month, going out there and just having horrendous performances with the main stars.
We need Demetrius Bronson.
Worse. Way worse than Demetrius Bronson. I mean, really, everyone always says, in order to get better, you've got to be in the ring with someone who is better than you. Which, of course, is true to a great degree. But you know what? There's something about having to get in there with someone who has no idea what they're doing and trying to pull a match out of them that also makes you very good. We're missing that nowadays. And it's sad.
Yeah.
Show was great.
It certainly was.
There you go, everybody.